Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto has Uzumaki ancestor bloodline. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Iron Monkey Fist, link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Ch1. Another Uzumaki still lives. On Hagakure no Sato Hokage Tower, the village hidden amongst the leaves was in ruins. The damage inflicted by the Kikbi no Yakum stretched for miles. Parts of the Great Wall that once encircled the Hidden Leaf village were destroyed, leveled by the destructive power of the nine-tailed fox, a creature capable of causing earthquakes and tsunamis, with but a flick of its tails. The wall was not all that had fallen. The damage had spread into the districts of the village, wrecking the Hokage compound and the Uchiha district, along with revamping the plots of land owned by the Nara clan. The village, known for its will of fire, certainly suffered a great deal of damage because of the Kikbi's sudden attack. Not only had Konoha suffered major economic losses with all the costly damage, but the village had also lost a lot of manpower in the attack. Many prominent shinobi such as Akamichi Tarifu, Uchiha Kagami and many others lost their lives during the attack. Perhaps the biggest loss was the Hidden Leaf's Yondaime Hokage, the Kairoi Senkim, Namikaze Minato. But the loss of perhaps the most gifted shinobi Konoha had ever produced, the political climate was in disarray. The daimon immediately called for the Sandaime Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, to come out of retirement and assume the mantle of Hokage once again. And so there he was, the Kami no Shinobi, the legendary professor of Konoha and master of all forms of shinobi combat. Hiruzen Sarutobi was now left to struggle with one dilemma that stood out of many the Kikbi attack had left him with. At the moment, only he knew what had truly happened. Uzumaki Kushina, Minato's wife, the second Jinchuriki of the Kikbi, had through the meddling of Uchiha Madara, been forced to unleash the Kikbi during labor. It had all happened so fast, and before Hiruzen knew what happened, he had lost 12 Anbu operatives, amongst which 2 of Konoha's brightest medics, and soon after, his dear wife, Sarutobi Bawako. Madara's meddling had rushed Minato and Kushina into their untimely deaths as they sacrificed their lives to save Konoha and their newborn son, Naruto. Minato had called forth the Shinigami and sealed the fox's yin chakra within himself, sealing away its spiritual essence and by proxy its physical body. The Yang chakra was sealed within Naruto as Minato knew without a doubt Konoha would come to face great danger and would need the fox's power to overcome it. The Shinigami then took Minato's soul as payment for sealing the Kikbi's Yin chakra, while Kushina died along with her husband, drained from her life force during the entire affair. Not even her unique Uzumaki vitality and longevity were able to save her, and thus Uzumaki Naruto became not only the third Jinchuriki of the Kikbi, but also an orphan in the same night. What to do with you now, Uzumaki Naruto Hiruzen wondered, looking down on the sleeping infant. Life would not be easy for this young one. No, whatever normalcy the child could have had it not been for Madara, was now out of the question. From an early age he would have to be protected and taught to defend himself and those around him. If only I had the time. Hiruzen reached into the makeshift cribs of blankets and plush pillows and held up the child. My dear Bawako, I could really use your help right now. As the Sandaime Hokage, his duties were to this village first and foremost. The lives of thousands surely outweighed that of one, even if this particular infant was the spawn of the 4th Hokage and a descendant of the near-extinct Uzumaki clan. And there it was. The answer to his dilemma was right before him. Another Uzumaki still lives. It was a risky move, Hiruzen was sure of it, but it was the only alternative he had. The Sarutobi clan could not adopt this one child and yet refuse the dozens of other children left without family, nor could he, in good conscience, make Naruto's status as a Jinchuriki public. There would be revolts, demands for a public execution by the civilian populace, and demands for Uzumaki Naruto to become a weapon with the sole purpose of destroying Konoha's enemies. Surely Minato and Kushina would understand. Hiruzen reasoned with himself. Even if he made Naruto's parentage public, he had his doubts if that would be enough to hail him as the hero his parents wanted him to be known as. And, surely, they would come for him. Iwa and Kumo would undoubtedly seek to assassinate the young boy, as would other villages. Minato and Kushina had, after all, gained fearsome reputations in their respective years of service, and if word of their offspring reached the other villages, the result could be catastrophic, potentially a cause for even. Hiruzen realized he could not hide the boy, for no matter how hard he would try, a leak of information would inevitably happen. There always were with secrets of this magnitude. Experience of over 30 years in office and 50 years of shinobi service had taught him that. Uzumaki Hattori. Hiruzen almost shuddered at the thought of Naruto growing up with that relic. Uzumaki Hattori was one of very few, if not the only one, left of the olden days when Konoha had just been founded by the Uchiha and Senju clan. He was old-fashioned, brazen and unsociable, but at the age of 117 he truly was a relic of the olden days. older than most shinobi villages as he came from a time in which shinobi were often nomadic clans, isolated from the world and servants to the highest bidder. The only village likely to be older than Uzumaki Hattori would have to be Takigakure. Although the hidden waterfall had an erratic past of achieving power and losing it after a few years of prosperity, they had yet to recover their power after the last war with Konoha, prompted by an attempt on the Shodai's life. A sharp knock broke Hirizen's thoughts. "Enter," he called as he adjusted his robes and took a seat behind his desk. The double doors opened and Jiraiya of the Sannin entered with a half-hearted smile. His clothes were dirty, scathed with mud and ripped in several parts of his trousers. The huge scroll on his back, suspended by rope, seemed equally worse for wear. Yet despite his ragged appearance, Jiraiya retained his youthful appearance and exuberant disposition. "Sensei," Jiraiya greeted. "Jiraiya, I thought I told you to get some rest. You overexerted yourself during the battle." Jiraiya did not waver under his stern gaze, much to Hirizen's chagrin. At 38 years old, Jiraiya was no longer the impulsive youngster that feared his rebukes. He was no longer the foolish genin who used the summoning jutsu on a whim and ended up lost for months. "How they have grown so quickly," Hirizen noted with a sigh as Jiraiya took a seat in front of him and helped himself to the sake, pouring a saucer full for his sensei and drinking from the jug himself. "What brings you here, Jiraiya?" The Gama Sennin helped himself to a good swing of the alcoholic beverage before answering. "I want to know your plans for Naruto." Jiraiya met his sensei's eyes and waited patiently for an answer. Years ago, when he was still a youngster, Jiraiya quite enjoyed theatrics. However, the current situation was far too dire, too serious to joke about. "Nobody but you and I know of Naruto-kun's parentage or status as a Jinchuriki, Jiraiya, and I intended to keep it that way. At least for now," Hirizen told him. As expected, Jiraiya's eyes narrowed and his eyebrows curved into a displeased frown. "You know why, Jiraiya?" "Please, I simply do not have the will to argue." "No, sensei, we are going to talk about this," Jiraiya forced. "The kid's a hero. Why shouldn't the people be allowed to know this kid is just as much of a hero as his parents are? Minato wouldn't have accepted this, and don't even get me started on Kushina. She would probably level this whole village. This is only temporarily, Jiraiya," Hirizen tried to appease his former pupil. "As I am sure you can imagine, there's a lot on my mind. I have yet to speak with the council, the daimyon's delegates or the populace for that matter. For the time being, it is of the utmost importance that we organize ourselves, treat our wounded and take some serious damage control. And then what? After all the fussy clans have been appeased, the politics have been all said and done, and the villagers brought out of evacuation, what then? Don't tell me you intend to have the boy put in an orphanage, or even worse, become a weapon." Hirizen sighed. "You are the boy's godfather, Jiraiya." "No." Jiraiya's answer was direct and firm. "I'm not a parent, sensei. You can't hand over a kid to me, it's just not possible. He would turn out just as messed up as I am. Besides, I can't look after a child when the village needs my intel, now more than ever." He made a valid argument, but truth be told, Jiraiya simply did not want to be reminded of his late student. Minato had been like a son to him, his legacy and his pride and joy. Jiraiya hadn't even looked at the infant since he had entered the office. He knew the second he looked into the child's vibrant blue eyes, he would see the boy's father. Naruto would serve as a painful memory, one he clearly did not want or need right now. "Then what do you suggest, Jiraiya? If you, the boy's godfather, will not take him, who will? The council will undoubtedly push for an ultimatum, either Uzumaki Naruto becomes a weapon or he will be executed." Knowing our Hirizen paused for a moment as he searched for the right word, misguided daimon, he will support the clans that have his favor, the very same clans that will push for either execution or turning the boy into a weapon. "Why don't you make this public?" Jiraiya suggested, clear desperation in his voice. "Make it common knowledge what a hero Naruto is before the council can make the motion to use him as a weapon. If the people find out wanton injustice they're planning." "Jiraiya," Hirizen said with an annoyed rise in his tone, causing baby Naruto to shift uncomfortably and yelp. "You're grasping at straws. The people of Konoha have just lost countless of loved ones once again. It hasn't been 10 years since the last war and now they have once again suffered such a loss all in one night. They will not take this very well. I'm sure you remember the riots only a few years ago, or have you forgotten? Let me remind you. It was at the time Minato-kun completed the Hiraishin and proved to be capable of decimating the enemy. We were finally beginning to win a war we would have otherwise undoubtedly lost. Do you remember now? The cries for blood, the cries for an attack on Iowa, to tear them apart and forever render incapable of rebuilding, just as they had tried to do to us. They will not accept this, Jiraiya. The sooner you stop fooling yourself the better. We must come up with a viable solution, one that does not harm Minato's child." "Then what do you suggest, sensei?" Jiraiya demanded, venom laced to his tone. "You know I can't take him. And if you're thinking about Tsunade, think again. Last I spoke to her she was still depressed about Dan's death. According to her assistant, she hasn't used any ninjutsu in months. She won't be able to protect Naruto, and like I said, Konoha can't afford the loss of intelligence if I take him. We have to come up with something else. Sensei and student locked eyes for a moment, sitting in silence and contemplating on what the other was thinking. Hiruzen knew Jiraiya better than his student thought he did. He knew Jiraiya would not want to live with a reminder of his beloved student, but he wasn't nearly cruel enough to confront him about that. After all, he had lost Orochimaru forever only recently. It made no difference if his heart was still beating, the kind boy Hiruzen knew years ago was lost forever. Hiruzen sighed wearily. He felt far older than he appeared to be. There is one more option, Jiraiya, he began quietly, Uzumaki Hattori. You've got to be kidding me. Jiraiya interrupted loudly. That old man is crazy. Not only does he make you look like a spring chicken, he's completely and utterly crazy. What kind of childhood would Naruto have with him, living with that relic? It is far better than any alternative we have come up with so far, Jiraiya, Hiruzen countered. Now, if you will let me finish, Uzumaki Hattori is indeed old and rather out of it, but if we have a caretaker along with him to look after the child, Naruto may still have a childhood with some degree of normalcy. A sheltered childhood is better than no childhood at all, surely you would agree to that. For a few moments Jiraiya was quiet. The Sandame's arguments were infallible, and he had no better solution than the old man did. Alright, Jiraiya finally conceded. Alright, if the old man is willing to take the boy in, and if he is willing to allow a caretaker, I'll make sure to protect the kid to the best of my ability whilst maintaining my information network. I won't be in the kid's life much, but it's better than nothing. It's all hell of a lot better than what I had. Jiraiya rarely referred to his orphan childhood, and so there was an uncomfortable silence Jiraiya decided to break after a moment. Who do you have in mind for this caretaker job? The Sanshi Taji, Hiruzen said almost instantly. Hiruzen knew she was the best for the job. Not only was she one of Kushina's midwives, she was one of her closest friends. Kushina had requested her to be there when Naruto was born. She was to be the boy's godmother. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. He had never heard of this Taji, nor had Kushina ever mentioned her as her choice for godmother. She and Minato had decided they would pick godparents respectively, and although he had never asked Kushina directly about her choice, it still struck him as odd. I'd like to see her file, sensei. Jiraiya, she's an Anbu operative. You know I cannot divulge you in such information without good cause. This shitstorm isn't a good enough cause for you? Jiraiya challenged. Hiruzen's expression remained blank, prompting his former student to glare at him. Fine, Jiraiya said as he moved towards the door. I'll just track her myself and test her skills firsthand. I'm not going to let an incompetent Kunoichi take care of Minato's kid. Just as his hand gripped onto the door, Jiraiya heard Hiruzen give a heavy sigh in defeat. Alright. I will fetch the file. Here, take Naruto-kun and wipe that smirk of your face, Hiruzen told him with a frown, passing the newborn to the toad sage. Hiruzen took his seat behind his desk and called for his secretary to take a break for good measures. Receiving a comply, the Hokage stood out of his chair and made his way to the far end of his office by the framed pictures of the Shodai and Nidaime Hokage. A quick ram hand seal later and the walls began to shift and contort rapidly as a safe became visible. Another minute later Hiruzen took his seat once again and placed the file on his table. There you have it, Hiruzen said with a motion of his hand. What he had just done, handing over information on Anbu operatives, was strictly forbidden and against protocol, but Jiraiya had given him no choice. He had no doubt in his mind whatever Jiraiya had planned to test his Sanshi Taji's skills would likely maim her or perhaps even kill her. Jiraiya was a perfectionist, and if he were to trust anyone with the life of his godson, it would have damn sure be someone skilled enough to protect him. Let's see. Jiraiya settled baby Naruto in one arm and flipped pages with another, nodding as he took in the information. 3 years in Anbu, not bad. Heh. She belongs to the same squad I was in. Jiraiya moved the page over and continued to read out loud. First class medic, an affinity for water and fire. Overall considered to be a B-rank shinobi. I see she's got a clean slate. No previous warnings or reports of misconduct. You will see she is of sound character. Kushina was very close to her and trusted her unconditionally. Hiruzen nodded. You would perhaps have known of their friendship if you were actually here longer than 6 weeks a year, Jiraiya. Jiraiya looked up at his sensei with annoyance, but allowed the comment to slide and continued to read the file. Alright, she'll do, Jiraiya decided after a long moment of silence broken only by the baby suckling noises. The question is, how are you going to hide the fact one of Konoha's first-class medical ninja is gone without a trace? Having her declared as a rogue shinobi won't do much good, especially if they sent Hunter Nin after her. She'll just end up endangering Naruto. Do not fret, Jiraiya, Hiruzen assured him, balancing the infant in his arms. I will simply fudge the paperwork. I'll have her set on a triple S rank mission on papers. It may be a little risky, but I have no doubt I will be able to bury her name. The triple S rank mission. Jiraiya repeated, shifting Naruto's weight. Do those kind of missions even exist? They're unheard of, old man. Are you sure you're not losing it? They're unheard of, but they exist, Hiruzen replied pointedly. Common knowledge amongst most civilians and shinobi is that classifications go up to A rank. However, the more seasoned shinobi will know of the S-rank classifications, but only the higher-ups of villages will know of double and triple S-ranked classifications. No need for the history lesson, sensei, Jiraiya commented with annoyance. He wasn't a damn underling anymore. It was simply embarrassing how his old sensei could still speak to him as if he were the same ignorant genin from all those years ago. How come I haven't heard of them before? I'm the strongest shinobi you've got. Hiruzen's expression went blank. Oh, but I did not realize you still considered yourself as one of my shinobi, Jiraiya, he replied with dry wit. What, with you coming and going as you please, whenever you please? No, I did not believe it to be prudent or necessary to inform you of this mission grade. Only certain groups within the shinobi forces know of and take on these missions. You, Jiraiya, are an individual. One I have long since given up on grooming for my position. Why would I tell you anything that is strictly on a need-to-know basis? A pointed silence resumed, in which Jiraiya glared at Hiruzen, who looked at him impassively. Something had broken between them a long time ago. He wasn't sure what or why, but he knew he no longer looked up to the man before him. Even after Orochimaru and Tsunade had left their home, Jiraiya remained as a valuable asset, and yet his former sensei did not seem to appreciate him at all. Still, Jiraiya pushed aside those thoughts. This wasn't about him, this was about Naruto. This was about Minato's child. That makes sense, Jiraiya replied. Of course it does, Hiruzen replied with a mirthless smile. If you can pull it off, then by all means do it. What worries me is that old fart, Uzumaki Hattori. The guy is literally ancient. He must have gone senile by now. I'm afraid so, Hiruzen agreed. We must move quickly. Hiruzen showed an oddly satisfied grin. You don't expect the Sandaime Hokage to leave Konoha in times of crisis, do you, Jiraiya? Jiraiya cursed vehemently under his breath. A week later, High no Kuni countryside. Within hours after having decided what to do with Naruto, Hiruzen and Jiraiya had taken action. Jisanshi Taji was summoned to the Hokage's office and sworn into secrecy over her next mission. The Kunoichi had been surprisingly fierce about the proposition and even requested they placed a cursed seal on her to forbid her from speaking of her mission should she ever be captured. Taji's loyalty to her best friend was admirable and she took her duties as godmother very seriously, although she had never been asked officially to fulfill the duty. Hiruzen had her pack her things an hour after her briefing while he prepared the necessary paperwork for the triple S-ranked mission that would last for a minimum of 13 years. Jiraiya took an instant liking to Taji and respected her enough not to make a single inappropriate remark. It was rather unusual for the Sannin, but Hiruzen was grateful. The Toad Sage respected Taji for her loyalty and determination and so took a liking to her, promising her she could always rely on him for protection and funds, should it ever be necessary. Within 2 days all had been prepared and so the surrogate mother, newborn and sage, set off for Yuzu no Kuni. The plan was to first make it to Rotorua, a small-time harbor village, and appropriate a ship to the island known as Whirlpool Country. Jiraiya-sama, Naruto-kun needs to be fed again. Jiraiya groaned loudly and turned on his heels. Again? He asked, to which Taji merely nodded. I swear, all the kid does is eat, sleep and poop. He is a baby after all, Jiraiya-sama, Taji replied meekly. Of course, Jiraiya said with unjustified ire. We're just a few hours away. Can't the kid hold it up? Jiraiya whined childishly, causing Taji to laugh. Sorry, Jiraiya-sama, but my duty is to Naruto first and foremost. If you wish to move on without us, feel free to do so, Taji joked good-naturedly, shifting the infant Naruto in her arms. You sure are serious about this whole surrogate mother business, Jiraiya commented. The hermit walked over to a tree and placed a hand on its bark. Nodding appreciatively, he swiftly chopped at it with his hand. It was like cutting through butter with a hot knife as the tree fell. Oh, Naruto-kun enjoyed that, Taji held up Naruto for Jiraiya to see his wide eyes, as if he could comprehend the impressiveness of what Jiraiya had just done. I must say, he is an unusual baby. He doesn't cry or laugh at all. He only gurgles when he's been fed. As shrewd as his old man, course you are. Jiraiya pinched Naruto's cheek. He instantly regretted the action as Naruto retaliated by vomiting over his hand. Ah, gross. He did that on purpose. Taji merely smiled. Oh come on now, Jiraiya-sama. He is only a baby. Yeah right, Jiraiya pointed at Naruto's smiling face. Look at him, he's smiling. Oh, my. Naruto has his mother's infectious smile. Shores of Yuzu no Kuni. The journey to Yuzu no Kuni had taken a little over 2 weeks in total and had gone smoothly without incident. It took much longer than Jiraiya had anticipated, but it couldn't be helped. They were carrying a child with them after all, and the Toad Sage did not mind in the least. During the duration of their journey, he and Taji swapped many stories, even about classified missions they had performed as Anbu. There was no need for any more secrecy as only one secret now truly mattered, and that was Naruto's existence until he was old enough to defend himself. Naturally, Jiraiya had for more thrilling tales to tell, and he indulged Taji in many of his exploits. He told her of the noteworthy shinobi he had faced in battle, the places he had been, and even gave her a copy of his first book, The Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Shinobi. Taji promised him she would read it to Naruto, although he attempted to dissuade her from doing so, as the only people that actually liked the book were his sensei, Fukasaku, Minato and Kushina. The mentioning of the latter two only further strengthened Taji's resolve, however, as she told him Naruto should know what kind of person his parents had wanted him to be. The journey came to an end not long after reaching the island of Yuzu no Kuni. It was a few hours before they had reached their destination. Uzumaki. The village hidden amongst the whirlpools. As they neared the outskirts of the village, Jiraiya noted how the scars of battle had yet to leave the landscape. The Sannin had been to the village only on 3 other occasions in his life. Back then the village had been rather impressive with its wide roads, cylinder-shaped buildings, and impressive designs of infrastructure that separated carriages from the pedestrians. In the middle of the village was its monument, a plaza decorated with statues and buildings in honor of their village leaders and other prominent figures that had been produced by the village. It was a dark chapter of the shinobi world indeed, as Uzumaki had been razed to the ground. The details were vague, and whatever evidence had been submitted was not enough for Konoha to go to war over. It had been too late once Yuzu had been wiped out by the massive attack spearheaded by Kumagakure and Iwagakure and backed by smaller shinobi villages. Jiraiya shook his head as they neared the remains of the walls that once been vast and protected the village. The Sannin ran a few diagnostic jutsu to detect trap seals the village had once used. Strangely enough, he found none. Performing the jutsu once again, Jiraiya received similar results. Strange, the old man is either dead or he doesn't care anymore. Either would be just as bad. If the man was dead, they had wasted weeks of traveling. If he simply did not care, then there was a good chance he would refuse to look after Naruto, descendant or not. Follow my lead carefully, Taji, Jiraiya instructed. As she nodded, he continued to lead the way into the ruins of the once proud nation of Seal's masters. Where are we going? Taji spoke so softly she was almost whispering. Clearly she was just as anxious as Jiraiya was. Jiraiya merely waved a hand at her and continued to lead the way to the one place he was sure the old man would be at. The plaza in the heart of the village. As they walked through the streets of Uzumaki, Jiraiya was reminded how large and grand the city had been, nearly stretching across the entire island, which was at least 3 times as big as Wave Country. You've got some rich heritage right here, Naruto. If we're lucky, the old fart might have saved some of the scrolls. After nearly an hour of carefully threading through the village, they had finally reached the plaza. The plaza retained much of its beauty, although there were some fallen pillars strewn across it. A fountain molded into a large spiral stood between the statues. Jiraiya's heart skipped a beat upon arriving in the plaza. Sat in a lawn chair before the statues was a figure with his back facing them. The figure sat in a rather hunched back fashion, and from what Jiraiya could tell he appeared to be sleeping. The old man had long white hair that reached the small of his back. He wore black overalls under the traditional marine blue armor of Uzumaki shinobi and a red sash around his waist. Holding out an arm in front of Taji to motion her behind, Jiraiya cupped hands over his mouth. Uzumaki Hattori. Jiraiya called out to the man. Uzumaki Hattori seemed to wake up instantly at the sound of his voice and began to turn to face him. Jiraiya. An hour later, Jiraiya sat opposite of Uzumaki Hattori in a cross-legged position and his hands on his knees. The Sannin was still surprised Hattori was still alive, but hid it impeccably and engaged the old man in a nostalgic conversation. Hattori had once been a ruthless shinobi, feared on every battlefield he stepped on and challenged by very few. Jiraiya had detested this man since his youth for his cutthroat attitude and old-fashioned views, but the years of solitude had mellowed him out. Hattori seemed as dangerous as a one-winged fly. Jiraiya wasn't even sure the old man was listening to half the words he was saying when he tried to explain the situation to the old man. Hattori seemed to nod every now and then, grunt noncommittally. With his droopy eyes and constant nodding off, Jiraiya doubted Uzumaki Hattori was in a state to take care of anyone. I see, Hattori croaked with a tired nod. My great-great-great my descendant, he then decided to simplify, is in danger of assassination by Iwa, Kumo and quite possibly his own birth country for being the Jinchuriki of the Kikbi, and now you wish to hide him here until he becomes old enough to defend himself. I see. Yes, Jiraiya said with relief. It had taken over an hour to explain the rather simple situation to Hattori. In Konoha he will either end being executed, turned into a weapon or treated with contempt for his entire life. His parents had made enemies in Kumo and Iwa, and they would undoubtedly attempt to take his life. Hattori nodded slowly, encouraging Jiraiya to continue. With your permission, we would like to hide Naruto here. I do not expect you to protect him, that is why his caretaker, Taji, Jiraiya, motioned the Anbu medic in the corner holding Naruto, is here. She will protect him and teach him the shinobi arts. She is skilled in providing for Naruto as well as you if you so wish it. The boy's hair is not red. All Uzumakis have red hair, Jiraiya. Hattori did not pose it as a question, more like a statement, and patiently waited for Jiraiya to explain. Kushina had red hair. Why does this young child not have red hair? He must have red hair. Jiraiya resisted the urge to groan. The boy's father, Namikaze Minato, I'm sure you have met him, had blonde hair. Apparently Minato's genes were the dominant ones. This was rather ironic, Jiraiya thought with an inward chuckle. In their relationship, it had clearly been Kushina who called the shots, and Minato went along with her every command. Jiraiya snapped out of his inner thoughts and put up a serious expression. I assure you, this is indeed your descendant. You must have some way of testing that for yourself, do you not? Hattori remained silent for the rest of Jiraiya's explanation and only spoke when the hermit had finished. Jiraiya, no tests will be necessary. I believe you, I can feel it in this boy myself. He possesses the distinctive chakra only an Uzumaki would. Hattori spoke with his croaky voice. The ancient man reached for the canteen Jiraiya offered him and took a few gulps before continuing with a more grave tone. Jiraiya, my days are waning. The Uzumaki traits of longevity and vitality have kept me alive for an exceptionally long time, even by clan standards. However, even I will die eventually. Over the years my hair has gone white, not gray, but white. This happens only when an Uzumaki lives long enough to reach an age where his body can no longer go on and his life force begins to gradually decrease. Hattori paused to allow the information sink with Jiraiya and then continued a moment later. My life is circling in the drain and soon Uzumaki Naruto will be the very last of the once great Uzumaki clan. You wish to teach him? Yes, Hattori nodded. The Uzumaki clan will live on in Naruto, but he must also carry out our traditions not only in blood, but in knowledge. I will teach him, educate him into a fine shinobi. At my age I am no good for ninjutsu or taijutsu, however there are a great many things I can and must pass on to Uzumaki Naruto. From there on out, Jiraiya and Hattori spend hours upon hours of discussions. Jiraiya clearly did not trust the old man and wanted to know every detail of what he wished to pass on to Naruto. Eventually, after much discussion, Hattori had promptly stood up and beckoned Jiraiya to follow him. The relic led him into the great tower of the village where the village leader ruled from and where the villagers would flee to in case of an evacuation order. Jiraiya soon came to understand he had never truly seen all of Uzumaki as underneath the surface were a labyrinth of secret pathways, tombs and honeycombs of storage facilities, as well as hidden training grounds. The founders of Uzumaki had truly designed a magnificent village. Those unfamiliar with the hidden underground of the village could get lost for days if not forever in the maze-like underground. Hattori led Jiraiya through the pathways swiftly and moved without a doubt in his direction. The old phantom knew the underground by heart. Eventually the two came to stop before a huge pair of double doors, 20 feet in width and 50 feet in height. What is this? Jiraiya asked the old man, feeling a sense of suspiciousness. He wasn't comfortable in the slightest with the man in the poorly lit labyrinth under the village. This, Jiraiya, is the treasure trove of my people. Of Naruto's people, Hattori told him and promptly bit his thumb and went through a complex string of seals Jiraiya could not recognize. This is Naruto's heritage. The massive double doors groaned and moved slowly, causing enough tremor for small chunks of rocks to fall down. They had not been used for years, Jiraiya noted. As the doors split open, Jiraiya's eyes widened considerably. Before him was a giant hall of shelves containing thousands of scrolls and books. What is this? Jiraiya turned to Hattori with an obvious sense of shock in his voice. Is this what I think it is, Hattori? Are these? Yes, Jiraiya. These are all the jutsu my people and Naruto's people, Hattori was keen on reminding him of that, have acquired over the years. Some of these were thought to be long forgotten, others were made forbidden, and a few were thought to be destroyed. This is the heritage of Uzumaki founded by the Uzumaki clan. This is Naruto's heritage. Jiraiya dropped all inhibitions as he entered the tomb. Even he, the legendary Gama Sennin, had been swept away with such profound shock, he could not help to feel like a child in sweet shop. Oddly enough, all the scrolls were kept in pristine conditioning, protected by the array of seals set up by the Uzumaki clan many generations ago. Our knowledge was feared so greatly, Kumo and Iwa and many others sought to destroy us. They never found what they were looking for, however, Hattori cackled with glee. They came in search of power to destroy their enemies, and they found nothing. These are amazing, Jiraiya read the tag on a rather thick scroll and made to reach for it, only to violently propel him backwards and into the ground. Jiraiya groaned and swore loudly as he got sat up. What was that? Only those of Uzumaki blood may touch these scrolls, Hattori explained, walking over to the shelf Jiraiya had been looking at. Allow me to demonstrate. Hattori reached for the very same scroll Jiraiya had reached for and plucked it off the shelf. A quick hand seal later, and the scroll glowed for a moment. You may copy its contents if you wish, but return the original to the shelf when you are done, will you? Jiraiya caught the scroll midair and reads it label with wide eyes. The reverse 4 symbol seal. This is an S-rank kinjutsu. It was said to be lost generations ago. Jiraiya quickly created a cage bunshin and had to copy the scroll's contents as he joined Hattori, who stood in his hunched back posture. Thank you. Hattori did not acknowledge his gratitude and got straight to the point in his croaky voice. You see why it is so important for me to pass on the Uzumaki clan's teachings to Naruto, Jiraiya. Jiraiya for his part scratched his cheek and thought. I can certainly see why you would think so, Hattori. I have no problems with him learning of his clan, but I do not want to see him become obsessed with obtaining all jutsu. I have lost a dear friend to such obsession, and I will not stand by and watch Naruto follow in the same footsteps. Of course not, Hattori quickly conceded. A little too quickly, but the ancient shinobi pressed on it quickly. I intend to only teach him of our seals. That is the most important heritage you will find here. What he plans to do with the rest of the jutsu obtained is up to him. Should he wish to share it with Konoha, so be it. He will be the new head of the Uzumaki clan when I am gone. Jiraiya's expression instantly lit up, seeing a great chance for Konoha to obtain more jutsu. At times like these, when the village had been greatly weakened, a larger arsenal of jutsu at their disposal was exactly what they needed. Then I accept your offer. You can teach Naruto all about his heritage as long as you stick to Fukinjutsu. The following 2 weeks had passed. Jiraiya spent most of his time with Taji, guarding her and young Naruto. However, conversation soon became mundane as Jiraiya had conversed many hours before with Taji on their journey, and thus they had run out of subjects to talk about. And so Jiraiya began spending time with Uzumaki Hattori, the oldest man he knew. At the age of 117, Uzumaki Hattori was like a never-ending fountain of information. The old Uzumaki had many things to tell and had a surprisingly sharp memory as he could remember a great many details Jiraiya had never heard of. As much as Jiraiya enjoyed listening to the old man's story, he was quick to remember why he had never truly liked the man. Hattori was as old-fashioned as it got. He believed in might makes right and other outdated ideologies. He wouldn't go so far as to call him a warmonger, but he would likely see eye to eye with Dansm, and that was never a good thing. Hattori had a habit of referring to how things were done in the old days and did not shy away from telling Jiraiya the gruesome details of missions he had gone on or incidents he was aware of. But despite his old-fashioned views, Jiraiya knew the man was hardly dangerous. Over the years his body had become weak and his ability to mold chakra had all but disappeared. Regardless, Jiraiya stayed for an additional 2 weeks by Taji's request. The old man too unnerved her, and though she was no weakling, being an Anbu operative, she felt safer for herself and Naruto, knowing the Toad Sage was with them. Eventually, however, Jiraiya knew he could no longer stay on the island. Konoha needed his intelligence network as well as his presence at this time. The other nations would be significantly less likely to try anything if they knew Jiraiya of the Sannin was there. Although, Jiraiya would most likely only stay for a couple of weeks before moving on with his journey and gathering intelligence for Konoha that would safeguard it and its secrets from their enemies. Do you really have to go? Taji held Naruto in her arms as she followed Jiraiya out of the house. They had been making use of the duration of their stay. Jiraiya had quickly repaired much of the damage, being quite dexterous, and restored the house's living conditions. So soon? Naruto and I need you. Jiraiya neared the door and reached for his red sleeveless coat and sat down in front of the door and pulled on his wooden sandals. I'm sorry, Taji, but Konoha needs my skills more. The sage turned to Taji and smiled reassuringly over his shoulder. I'll be back in a couple of months. If you need anything, you can send a messenger bird to the old man. Are you leaving because of Konoha or because of Naruto? Taji demanded, hugging the infant closer to her in a protective manner. Please tell me you're not leaving because he reminds you too much of Minato. Jiraiya stopped dead in his tracks and temporarily weakened his grip on his wooden sandals. Look, Taji, Jiraiya began softly, yes, the kid reminds me of Minato, and it hurts, but that's not why I'm leaving. Jiraiya stood up and tapped the jettas on the concrete floor before the door, painfully reminded of the fact he had missed out on Minato and Kushina's funeral, and he hadn't even gotten the time to properly mourn his surrogate son passing. You're his godfather, Taji bitted him. Over the past few weeks she had gotten close enough to the Sannin to know her boundaries, and so she no longer referred to him with reverence. Naruto needs you. And I need you too, she quickly added. That old man scares the living hell out of me, Jiraiya. Jiraiya sighed tiredly for a moment and nodded. I know he does, but the man is harmless. Believe me when I say there is nothing he could do to hurt Naruto or you. He can barely mold chakra, and you're an Anbu operative. Have some faith in yourself, Taji. Of course, the Kunoichi sighed. You better come back quickly. There's no way I can stand that man on my own for long. Naruto doesn't start training till his 6th birthday, but I got a feeling that old man is a bit too anxious to pass on his genjutsu to Naruto. Don't worry, Jiraiya assured her. It'll be fine. And you better be here for his birthdays, Jiraiya, or I will never forgive you. Got ya? I'll drop by every few months or so, and I'll definitely be here for his birthdays, Jiraiya quickly amended when he caught the scornful look that graced Taji's expression. Finally and reluctantly, Taji sighed in defeat. Alright, go. Konoha needs you, Jiraiya. Jiraiya placed his hands on her shoulders and nodded to her. Don't you worry, I'll be back soon. I sure hope so, Taji thought as Jiraiya closed the door behind him. Taji moved to the living room and pushed aside the curtains to see Jiraiya walk down the road. Because that man Uzumaki Hattori, he scares the hell out of me. As if on cue, Naruto began to wail for food, reminding Taji of her duties as both a mother and wet nurse. Ch2. Rise. 3 weeks later. It had been 3 weeks since Jiraiya left Uzumaki, and Taji was already feeling as if she was losing her mind. Taking care of her new charge wasn't as tiring as it was tedious for the former Anbu operative. And while she loved little Naruto as if he was her own son and would sacrifice anything and anyone to protect him without hesitation, as she had proven by sacrificing her life and career in Konoha on only a few hours' notice, the day-after-day repetition of menial tasks had become incredibly boring as she catered to the newborn's wails for affection, food and changing. Still, it wasn't all bad. One of the good things about her situation was that Naruto slept for most of the day, thus allowing her plenty of time to read. It was an enjoyable pastime she rarely had time for when she worked in the field. Taji was also grateful for her elite training in Anbu, during which she was taught the Kage Bunshin, one of Konoha's most sought-after techniques. The shadow clone technique allowed her to find reading materials whilst simultaneously caring for Naruto. Yuzu no Kuni was once a nation rich in literature and culture, so she experienced little to no difficulty finding reading material amongst the ruins. In addition, she was grateful for the rare medical scrolls from the vault Hattori brought over on his visits. The relic was extremely interested in Naruto and doted on him at every opportunity. Though not in the way that he would coo and tickle the child or that he would pull him using expressions, but rather in the way he would hold the child and rock him to sleep as he told of grand tales that the child would not be able to understand for years to come. Naturally, Taji made sure none of his tales were as gruesome as the ones she had heard him share with Jiraiya, and Hattori had enough tact to refrain from such. At first she had been rather weary of the lone survivor of the silent massacre of Uzumaki, but eventually, as time crawled by and Hattori's visits to see Naruto became more frequent, Taji began to drop her guard. He is Naru-chan's grandfather after all, she reasoned with herself. He would never want to hurt him. Of course, technically speaking, Hattori was not the boy's grandfather, but he preferred it to whatever real relation he had to the boy, as he referred to himself as such when speaking to the infant. To Taji's immense surprise, she learned Hattori was the brother-in-law of the Shodai Senju Hiroshima and that the Uzumaki were related not only to the Senju clan, but to the Uchiha clan as well. The relic generously indulged her in her many questions, apparently taking no offense to her curiosity and enjoying the opportunity to revel in nostalgia. He told her many stories dating back to the very founding of Konoha and beyond. In his lifetime, he had met with the Shodai many times, and Taji was excited to learn what little facts he was able to share with her. Strangely enough, the relic had a great deal more respect for Hashirama's younger brother, with whom he had more in common, she suspected, as the Nidaime was known to be a very pragmatic and secluded individual. Aside from the Hokage, Hattori also told her a tale or two about his sister, Uzumaki Mido, who was the bridge that bonded the Uzumaki and the Senju clans. Taji was fascinated by the knowledge that Hattori was the legendary Tsunade's great uncle. And while Hattori had a great deal of history to tell her, the most interesting of all was the history of the Uzumaki clan, a subject of great interest to her as her dearest friend Kushina had told her some on occasion, though not to the same detail. Taji learned that the birth of the Uzumaki clan dated back many hundreds of years ago, when the mythical Rikiden Sennin, the master of the Rinnegan and founder of ninjutsu, fathered 2 sons of whom the elder inherited his eyes and the younger inherited his body. Somewhere down the line of history, the Uchiha clan and Senju clan came to existence, seemingly destined to fight one another as their kin were hired by opposing nations at war. By this time, the Uzumaki clan had long since come to existence and lived isolated lives on this very island where they believed the sage was born and died, though they had never found his burial site. Hattori had even shared his theory which speculated there was a good chance the Hokage were close relatives to the Uchihas and by proxy to the Uzumaki and Senju as well, as they were also likely to be descendants of the older brother who passed on various mutations of the Rikiden Sennin's Rinnegan, a ninjutsu she had never heard of before. Admittedly, this is an unfound theory, young one, Hattori had croaked. I would need to have access to the Hokage shrines to trace their ancestry, but the Hokages have always been very secretive of their affairs. They would never admit to having any blood relation to the Uchiha. Most notably, Hattori was very adamant that she understood one absolutely truth, and that was that the Uzumaki were scholars first and foremost. The Uzumaki did not start out as a shinobi clan, they came to be one for reasons beyond her thinking. The Uzumaki had an insatiable thirst for knowledge so great it took precedent above all else. This was not to say the Uzumaki were in any shape or form weak. In fact, they were far from it, as Hattori boasted on numerous occasions. It was in their pursuit of knowledge and understanding of the universe that the Uzumaki had grown both in wisdom and in power, developing unrivaled jutsu their enemies could not hope to match. In fact, they grew so powerful that Uzumaki was kept a hidden village since its founding, as countless nations sought them out for their aid in their wars. Barbaric wars the Uzumaki looked down upon with disdain, for they were above senseless violence. The Uzumaki did not fight unless it was absolutely necessary, they refused to participate in any conflict that did not involve them directly. Not even when they were asked by their cousins of the Senju clan to aid them against their mortal enemies of the Uchiha clan, did the Uzumaki fight. Instead, they opted for neutrality as they were related to both clans and did not wish to be involved in their feud, which had lasted for decades. When asked how the Uzumaki sustained themselves without taking on missions or without a daimon for funding, Hattori revealed to her that, while they preferred to keep it to themselves, they were not above trading in weapons, knowledge and some of the rare natural resources that could be found on the main island and on the smaller ones nearby islands. Neither Jiraiya nor Taji had even noticed as they were hidden by genjutsu sustained by seals that were still active even now. In fact, to Taji's surprise, even the main island was hidden from view. But, Hattori-san, if this island was hidden all this time, how did Jiraiya manage to bring us here? She had asked with a confused frown permeating on her otherwise flawless skin. In response, the relic cackled with childish glee. A long time ago, Kushina returned to this island with that man and Jiraiya. By that man, Taji assumed he meant Namikaze Minato, for whom Hattori appeared to have a cool, grudging respect. Those born with Uzumaki blood will always be able to find this island. However, for those we consider allies, we have ways of letting them return. I suspect Kushina allowed that man and Jiraiya to return to this main island whenever they pleased. For once the silly girl's disregard for our ways turned out helpful. In her 3 weeks of living on the island, Taji accumulated more knowledge on the legendary Rikiden Sennin than most scholars did in a lifetime of research. She learned from Hattori that a great number of ninjutsu and bloodline limits could be traced back to the Sage of Six Paths. Virtually all ninjutsu were mutations of the Rinnegan passed down the elder brother's lineage, while a great number of body-related Kekkei Genkai came down from the second brother's lineage, amongst other these included the infamous dead bone pulse of the Kagaya clan. The Uzumaki, whom were born with strong chakra and incredible stamina, vitality and longevity, were undoubtedly descendants of the younger brother. As were the Senju, whose members were also born with strong chakra and bodies were capable of incredible ninjutsu, the greatest examples of this being the Shadai's Mokuton and the Nidame's space-time ninjutsu. However, only the Uzumaki and Senju were born with the innate potential to master all elements, according to Hattori. This explained quite a great deal about Kushina's immensely powerful ninjutsu, something Taji had always been curious about. Truly, she had learned a great many things since she came to Uzushio, things she would otherwise have had no chance of learning, but still, she was no Uzumaki, and so her thirst for knowledge was not so great that it prevented her from sighing in utter boredom, as time seemed to creep by at an increasingly slower pace. There was not much she could do for amusement other than reading. Even that had gotten dull, and considering how book-smart she was, as most good medics were, that was quite unusual. Fortunately, Hattori found a remedy to her boredom and gifted her with a few scrolls of practically ancient medical jutsu from the Uzumaki vault, claiming that she was now an honorary member of the Uzumaki clan, now that she was Naruto's mother. Taji suspected it was Hattori's way of getting closer to her son, but was very much grateful for the opportunity nonetheless and relished in the practical exercises she could now spend her time on. She had been giving free rein over the medical jutsu shelves in Uzushio's treasury tomb and left Naruto in the care of Hattori while she went to look for more jutsu. Thank you, Hattori-san, I'll be back soon. It is no problem, take your time. I will take good care of the boy while you're gone, Hattori croaked as Taji slipped on a pair of shoes and rushed out of the door to gather some of the rare herbs that grew near the coast. They would be perfect for her research. As the door closed with a soft clicking noise, a sinister snarl crept onto Hattori's face. Listen closely, young one, someday soon you will become the next Uzumaki clan leader. I will raise you and I will nurture you, I will make you strong so that one day you can rebuild Uzushio and destroy our enemies. They will pay for what they have hidden. They will all pay. The cackle escaped Hattori's throat. It was a frightening kind of laughter that did not hide the hatred in his voice as he spoke. Soon, Naruto, you will begin your path to greatness. The cry escaped the infant as the baby boy began to bawl fearfully, scared beyond measure. Hattori's dark demeanor evidently upset the child. Silence. The child fell silent on command, looking up to his great ancestor with bulging blue eyes and silent cries emitting from his small mouth. Uzumaki Naruto would begin his path to greatness soon, willingly or unwillingly. 2 years later. Naruto age 2. Once she had finally and truly settled in Uzumaki, time went by fairly quickly, Taji noticed. Her days went by in a blur of systematically changing, feeding and nursing Naruto, and studying and developing new medical jutsu in her spare time. Naruto was a rather scrawny baby and stayed remarkably skinny despite fears of being overfed. Tori eased her fears soon enough, informing that Uzumakis had extraordinary metabolisms as a byproduct of their extraordinary longevity and vitality. The relic assured her that by the time Naruto reached puberty, he would fill out accordingly. The ancient Uzumaki had kept his distance for the most part of the 2 years. Occasionally he would ask Taji to help with his chores, such as setting up traps to capture wildlife on the island, or with skinning the fish he caught every now and then. Taji assumed he was just trying to be thoughtful by giving her excuses to get her out of the house, where she spent most of her time with Naruto and doing her research, so she indulged him. Her fears of the man had all but disappeared over time. She did not mind his occasional visits to check up on Naruto in the slightest. And as promised, Jiraiya had dropped by every 3 to 5 months and was always on time for Naruto's birthdays. He never stayed longer than a few days, but Taji was deeply grateful for his company and the much appreciated supplies he brought with him. Jiraiya typically doted on his godson whenever he visited the island, though Naruto seemed to forget who he was each time, as Jiraiya never stayed long enough for Naruto to remember him. Taji was rather worried about her son as the child took after Kushina, and being the bundle of energy he was, it was becoming increasingly more difficult to keep track of. This only worsened by the time Naruto could walk at 1 year old. The child truly was Taji's pride and joy, however, and she began to increasingly dread the day she would have to tell him she was not his real mother. Still, she comforted herself with the knowledge there were still quite a few years left. She was still the one he looked to when he was hungry or upset, and she was still the one he babbled to in his increasingly coherent sentences. And when he grew old enough, she would be the one to put a kunai in his hand, teach him the hand seals, how to manipulate his chakra, and one day, help him understand heartbreak. Achan, hungry. Taji looked down at the adorable 2-year-old standing in front of her recliner with his arms outstretched. Of course, honey, Taji cooed, picking up the child that'd been playing peacefully with his blocks before. Let's get you some food, Naruto-chan. Taji snuggled against the squealing toddler while walking into the kitchen. She held the child in one arm and opened a cupboard with another. After making the boy a snack, she sat him down by his toys and watched with a sense of fascination at when young Naruto switched between eating with his left and playing with his right hand. Naruto was extraordinarily intelligent for a child, Taji could tell by the way he placed the cubes in symmetrical order, building small fortresses and other buildings that oddly enough resembled the cylinder-shaped buildings of Uzushio. She couldn't help but smile with a great sense of pride as the years continued to fly past. 2 years later. Naruto aged 4. It had been a few months after Naruto's 4th birthday and to Taji's great dismay, Jiraiya hadn't shown up. Although she made plans to thoroughly chew him out for it the next time she saw him, she acknowledged that she would have to cut him some slack given the nature of his work. Life as the Toad Sage, which mandated Jiraiya had to travel the world and seek to cure imbalances in nature, as Jiraiya had told her during their long talks, as well as being in charge of supplying Konoha with a great deal of information, had to be hard on the man. Jiraiya did seem to genuinely care for his godson, so he probably wished he could visit more often, and at the very least, he regularly sent toad summons bearing gifts and supplies for the both of them. At age 4 Naruto was a curious child with an unusually long attention span, a trait that Taji pinned on his lack of interaction with other children his age. The boy could listen for hours on end as his grandfather told him of the olden days, though his recollections were toned down on the details in Taji's presence and were simplified for the child to understand. The Tori increasingly spent more and more of his time with the child. Taji did not mind at first as it allowed her to do some research on medical jutsu she could bring back with her to Konoha when the time finally came. However, as time went on, Taji would more often than not find Naruto waiting for her at his grandfather's house a few blocks away. Not only was it a disturbing thought for Naruto to be wandering about the ghost town alone, but Hattori had enamored the child to the point he sometimes would just up and leave to spend time with his grandfather without saying a word. And today was one of those days. Taji found herself walking down the familiar road down to Hattori's house. It was a short distance away from their house, and so she had come to cease worrying about Naruto making the small commute by herself. Nearing the small house, she entered through the front door and announced her present. Hattori-san, hello there. There was no answer, so Taji promptly made her way through the hallway, not bothering to take off her sandals as the wood pan floor had withered and grayed immensely. Naruto-chan. Hattori-san. There was no answer. No. A fearful voice called out from the back. Taji instantly recognized it to be her son's. Alarmed, she ran through the living room and neared the parted slide doors to the garden and walked in on Hattori and Naruto in their back garden, where the old man was forcing Naruto to kill a stringed-up rabbit laid before him with a kunai. The child screamed and kicked, tears running down his chubby, whisker-marked cheeks as he resisted as much as he could. Jaichin, I don't wanna. What are you doing, Hattori? Do as I tell you, child. Hattori bristled and forced the boy's kunai brandishing hand in the skull of the rabbit. It was not a clean kill. The rabbit convulsed uncontrollably, shaking and arching its spine. Blood spurted out of the entry wound and showered the last of the uzumaki. The young boy bawled louder than Taji had ever heard before, prompting her maternal instincts to kick in as she surged forward with a burst of speed she could hardly believe she was still capable of. After 4 years of inactivity, she had gotten rusty, very rusty, however it was apparent she could still command enough speed to yank Naruto out of Hattori's grasp and backpedal several feet away in the blink of an eye. What are you doing to my son? Taji demanded loudly with barely restrained anger in her voice as Naruto clutched onto her like a lifeguard, trembling in fear and shaking uncontrollably as he cried. What is the meaning of this, Hattori? She screamed whilst channeling her urge to kill. You are not his mother. Hattori spat with venomous insanity, clutching onto the kunai in his hand tightly. He got out of his seated position and staggered towards her in his hunched back manner, with a deranged look in his eye. That boy is not your son. Kachin? Naruto asked fearfully. Kachin, is that true? Taji couldn't bear looking him in the eye and merely held onto him tightly. Realizing the truth, Naruto began to cry even louder and buried himself in the nape of her neck, babbling incoherently through sobs and tears. Hattori Taji spoke with barely restrained anger. I am going to take my son back home. You will not follow us. I will speak to my son and after I have finished comforting him, you and I will talk. If you do not come with a satisfactory explanation I am going to take my son and we will leave this island. Without another word, Taji quickly spun on her heels and left in a hurry, holding tightly onto Naruto and leaving Hattori to his own devices. As she left carrying Naruto, Hattori's eyes narrowed and he breathed heavily, literally shaking with anger, so much so the kunai bent under his grip, digging deep into his flesh and causing thin streams of blood to drip to the ground. Hattori had acted too soon and as a result his plans were further set back. 1 year later, it had been a terrible ordeal for Taji the day she had found Naruto being forced to make his first kill on an animal. A year had passed since then, but even now she could clearly remember the day. Naruto had been inconsolable for the longest of times once he found out Taji was not his real mother and ever since their relationship had undoubtedly changed. He still called her mother, but Taji knew it was purely out of habit. It was a painful reality, but Naruto clearly no longer saw her as his mother, but more like a caretaker or a distant relative. That same day she had gotten into her first argument with Hattori and she quickly learned Hattori was incredibly unstable. Jiraiya had not come to visit on Naruto's birthday for the second time in a row. He had not once dropped by that year, and Taji could not help but feel some ire against her fellow godparent. Whatever misguided thoughts you may have, wench, that boy is my descendant. He is mine to raise and he is mine to teach. He will soon be the last of the great and most ancient Uzumaki clan. I will not have you meddle with my ambitions. Not since his mother have I seen such potential. I shall not let it be wasted, not again. He will not follow in her footsteps. At all costs, this boy will become a true Uzumaki, fit to sire the revival of the Uzumaki. Taji had been furious at that and responded with equal venom. Naruto was placed in my care. He is my son for all intents and purposes. Kushina selected me to be his godmother, therefore I am his mother and he is my son. I tolerated you being in his life because he took a liking to you, but you have betrayed our trust. What were you thinking, forcing a 4-year-old to kill? These are not the olden days, Hattori. Naruto is not like you. And if you ever talk about Naruto like he is some kind of tool again, we will be leaving this island for good. They argued for hours that day. Taji was tempted to inform Jiraiya and the Sandaime of what was happening, but eventually decided against it as Naruto was her son and as his mother, she had to take responsibility. At first, she forbade Hattori from seeking out the boy on his own initiative, but the old man had disregarded her wishes and this of course led to more strife between them. After weeks of holding nothing but contempt for one another, they reluctantly reconciled. Taji forced herself to look past Hattori's actions as she understood he lived in the past and what he had done with Naruto was no different from what he had experienced as a child. She could also see the good intentions in his actions and coupled with Naruto's cries to see his grandfather, she could not avoid him for much longer anyway. That was a terrible mistake on her part as her decision to allow Hattori back into their lives would forever change everything. It had been an ordinary day, only a few before Naruto's 6th birthday. The child was off playing in the garden whilst she prepared dinner unbeknownst of a shadowy figure sneaking up on her. The shadowy figure was Hattori and in his hand, he carried a vial of special ink infused with chakra used for Fukinjutsu. Taji's rusty Anbu senses kicked in too late and before she knew what happened, she was blindsided and ink seeped into the skin of her face where a 3-eyed tattoo formed on her forehead. Juin. Shin Shiki. The effects were instant and Hattori cackled with glee, triumphantly so as Taji's eyes went blank and unfocused. Young Naruto hearing the commotion went inside and walked in on a terrifying scene of his mother on her knees, drooling and unresponsive. Hachan. Neither she nor Hattori spoke, both seemingly off in a distant space. Jai-chan. Taji's eyes regained focused and she returned Naruto's hug in a robotic fashion and cooed in a monotone voice for a moment before pushing him away. You have to go with Ajay-sama, Naruto-kun. It's time to begin your training. Hachan, you said I had to wait till I was 6 to start training. Taji's eyes remained blank, but a grip on his shoulders tightened painfully. Do not argue with me, Naruto-kun. Do as your mother tells you to. The boy only nodded, no words came to him that could express his confusion. Wasting no time, Hattori grasped the boy's smaller hand in his own and began to drag him away, off to begin his training, off on a path he had not chosen, but followed regardless, for his mother knew best. 1 year later. It was a year later and Hattori could not deny it, Uzumaki Naruto was a prodigy in a league of his own. He marveled at the boy's ingenuity and resilience. Everything he taught the boy, the child would absorb quicker than he thought possible, blowing away even his high expectations like they were nothing. Hattori often wondered how the boy would have turned out if he had enslaved Taji's mind sooner, perhaps he would have been even more powerful. The mere thought of it could make his blood boil. Time was far more precious for him than anyone else. If only he had acted sooner, but there was something to be said for Taji, as much as he despised her. She was the driving force behind his heir, her maternal affections were what motivated him, and thus he allowed her to retain her mind for the most part, meddling with her thoughts and brain, only when she defied him. Over time, her moments of defiance became fewer and fewer, obedience seemingly lapping over into her subconscious. As a result, there were some noticeable changes in the former Anbu operative. His skin had been applied rather haphazardly, and thus as a side effect, Taji's brain had degenerated in certain ways. She was still capable of doing his bidding, but the damage was irreparable. Still, Hattori had to admit Taji was crucial in the development of his heir. It was the only reason she was still alive. Jiraiya dropped by on the Naruto's 6th birthday, he stayed for only 2 days and left after being relieved from his promise by Taji, who under Hattori's directive, told the Sannin his occasional visits were doing more harm than good as they would upset Naruto whenever he left, and after being reminded that his work for Konoha was certainly more important, Jiraiya readily agreed, promising to drop by at least once every 2 years instead. The very next day, the boy's training had begun. Hattori started with teaching the boy basic chakra control, calligraphy, key for truth genjutsu masters, tactics and strategy through medium of Shingai. Soon, the boy had started reading tomes on the Uzumaki's heritage by himself. It was important that he knew about the clan's history if he were to ever lead it. Hattori's heir did not particularly like reading, he was much like his biological mother in that sense, but Hattori did not take no for an answer. The Uzumaki clan was known for many things aside from genjutsu, including literacy and intelligence. And so the boy obeyed, convinced that his grandfather and surrogate mother knew best. Within 2 months the boy had mastered a handful of basic E-rank ninjutsu taught in Konoha's academy. From then on Hattori began to continuously and rapidly increase the scale. Tasks became harder, jutsu became more difficult, and studying became much more intense. By the age of 7 Naruto mastered the basic chakra control exercises and moved on to genjutsu. It took him only a week to master tree climbing and just a few more days for water walking. Hattori knew Naruto had incredibly large chakra reserves for a young boy, even by Uzumaki terms, and made use of it by having Taji begin the child's training in advanced chakra control and manipulation. The woman had her uses as an Anbu-trained medic with near-perfect chakra control. She taught him a variety of medical jutsu, along with her advanced chakra control and manipulation lessons, whilst Hattori drilled the boy on the foundations of genjutsu, a particular branch of jutsu he excelled at far greater than anticipated. By the time he was 10, Naruto had already become a Chunin-leveled ninja. Most notably, his skill in genjutsu was remarkable and flourished in unpredictable ways due to his ingenuity and creativity. Naruto excelled greatly at all forms of shinobi combat taught to him and quickly absorbed genjutsu and ninjutsu, though his genjutsu was rather weak in comparison, despite his efforts. Hattori made sure the boy knew at least how to break high-level genjutsu before moving on to other subjects. Perhaps most notably, it soon became apparent Naruto had extremely high affinities for wind and water, typical of the Uzumaki clan, and so Hattori brought the boy scrolls from the Uzumaki clan vault that contained advanced uses of nature manipulation. One of the scrolls was particularly valuable as it was written by none other than Senju Tabarama as a gift to the Uzumaki clan. The scroll contained the secret to using the water molecules in the air for Suiten jutsu. As valuable as that was, Naruto's natural gift for wind jutsu manifested itself in a rare form of telekinesis. It was truly remarkable, so great in fact, Hattori made it a priority his heir sought complete mastery of the technique, and thus Naruto spent hours in complete silence as he meditated whilst simultaneously exercising his control over his wind element to the point he could levitate an entire kunai set in perfect synchronization and in intricate sequences. At the age of 10 Naruto knew over 100 jutsu in total, ranging from all basic 5 elemental jutsu to medical jutsu, kinjutsu, various arts, and even a handful kinjutsu thought to be impossible to master by seasoned shinobi decades his senior. It was now the time, Hattori decided. Naruto met with his tenant. Yuzu no Kuni Mountains. On the top of Yuzu no Kuni's mountain terrain, many miles away from the village and on the other side of the island, the Uzumaki built a temple for Uzumaki Mido and the Kikbi. This temple was buried in the mountains and began at the top and ended at the bottom in an enormous chamber beneath sea level. The chamber served as a contingency plan in case the Kikbi ever escaped Mido. Though, fortunately, this never happened. In the case it did, the entire lower part of the temple could have been disengaged and dropped to the depths of the oceans, where it would be crushed, and Kikbi would have likely died, buying them enough time to prepare for when it resurrected. 1. The temple went down hundreds upon hundreds of feet down the mountain, but Naruto diligently walked down the spiral stairs, carrying Hattori on his back. The seals that maintained this facility had long since run out of chakra, and it reflected on the dusting state of the temple. It had been years since the elevators were last used, neither wanted to take the risk of damaging the temple anymore. It would simply add more to the burden of restoring the temple to its prime. "We are here, Ajay-sama," Naruto announced as they reached the bottom chamber. It was cold, damp and worn. The walls were wide and scratched, and rubble laid spread over the chamber that seemed to have been big. The white walls painted the illusion the chamber stretched out infinitely. The damage had clearly been done in training, but it would do for now. "My sister once roamed these halls," Hattori's voice carried out in an echo. "Here, she lived and trained. Here she awakened her chains, and here she conquered the Kikbi. And after her, your mother came here, and while she did not conquer the Kikbi, her chains surpassed even that of my sister, and so she was capable of controlling the beast. Now, it is time to begin your path to become the third Uzumaki Jinchuriki, and when the time comes, another Uzumaki, your son perhaps, will carry the burden. Your experiences here will aid the next generation." Naruto nodded as his eyes panned over the chamber. Everything was so white, just pure white. He almost couldn't tell the floor from the ceiling. "Ajay-sama," he looked to Hattori with an uncertain look, "I have not yet awakened my chains. How am I to defeat the Kikbi without them?" "Defeat?" Hattori let out a laugh and shook his head. "You will not challenge the fox today, it is far too early for that. No, today, we will start slowly in that regard. You will meet the Kikbi, that is all. Do you understand me, child?" "Yes, Ajay-sama," Naruto answered stoically with an obedient nod. In the privacy of his own mind he secretly feared Hattori greatly overestimated his abilities and deemed him ready to face the Kyuubi in combat. The relic made no secret of his astonishment whenever he beat his expectations. Fortunately that was not the case. "I will do as you have taught me, Ajay-sama," he said moving away from Hattori, walking several feet away as close to the center of the chamber as he could. His footsteps echoed loudly into the infinity of white. Hattori's voice rang behind him, loud and grave. "Be careful of the fox, child. Do not trust a word it says, and do not touch the seal." Naruto nodded to the relic in acknowledgement and sat down cross-legged. He had practiced meditating many times now. It almost came naturally. All he had to do was take a deep breath and close his eyes and Naruto's mindscape. "This place is filthy," Naruto voiced the first thing he thought upon entering his mindscape. A low, grumbling noise followed his statement. It sounded irritated as though indignant of his remark. "Kikbi?" Naruto called out as he walked through the empty halls of the sewer. He felt a mixture of anxiety and fear, but he refused to go back so soon before even seeing the Bijk. "At last my new jailer comes to visit me," a booming voice rang out as Naruto reached the end of the hall and stalked towards the shadows. "Have you come to conquer me, boy? Come to force your will?" "No," Naruto said loudly as he walked towards a gigantic cage. Much to his own dismay his voice shook and was laced with fear. "I am here to talk." "Fukuku talk, yes I am sure you are," Kikbi's voice carried in mocking laughter. "I am no fool, insolent boy. Everything you see, I see. Everything you know, I know. You cannot fool me." Naruto seriously doubted this, but did not question the fox just yet. There was nothing to gain from agitating the Bijk. "I see. The relic manipulates you," the Kikbi rang out from the darkness, his booming voice carrying out in an echo. "You are as much a tool as the blade he put in your hand. Do you expect me to deny that?" Naruto asked with genuine curiosity, tilting his head. It was a bad habit Hattori had beaten out of him, having deemed it undignified and unbecoming of an Uzumaki, but the relic was nowhere to be found now. In his mindscape Naruto was free. "I do not deny it. I am fully aware of what I am. A tool. Yes, Naruto nodded simplistically, not even remotely challenging the statement. A tool. The Kyuubi took a moment to process his response, clearly disturbed by the honesty of it at least somewhat. You have come here to talk. The fox released an impatient growl from its throat so great the air vibrated. Then speak. Would you please show yourself? Naruto asked as politely as he could. Why don't you open the cage? The Kyuubi replied mockingly. His gigantic red slit eyes glowed eerily in the shadows of the cage. I would be more than willing to show myself if you did. Naruto gave a shrug feigning non-discomfort. Maybe, one day I'd like to. You would have me freed. Yes, Naruto replied firmly as though it were a simple answer to a simple question. Why not? He added as an afterthought, entertaining the possibility the fox preferred to dwell in his mindscape. Do you not know what I am, what I can do, what I have done? Do you have an idea what I would do, given the opportunity? Of course I do. I know all about you, Kyuubi. Naruto gave a small smile as he eyed the fox with bemusement in his knowing. I thought you said you saw everything I saw and knew all that I knew. The fox moved forward, a gigantic humanoid claw hand grasping one of the humongous bars on his cage. It didn't speak, thus Naruto took as a sign to continue. You are the first son of the Rikiden Sennin, Naruto said as he took in the fox's entirety, smothering his fear at his begun to build up at the sight of the Bijk's imposing enormity. Your name is Kurama of the Nine Tails, and you are the former partner of Uzumaki Mido. How do you know my name? Kurama demanded with a booming voice, extending his remaining claw at Naruto in an attempt to rip his face off. Speak. Naruto jumped backwards, unable to steel himself from his own terror and thus falling on his backside in his haste. His fear came back with a vengeance, but only for a moment as he refused to lie there on the ground, terrified beyond his wits. With as much dignity as he could muster, he slowly picked himself up, keeping an apprehensive eye on the fox. Uzumaki Mido shared with her family what you told her, including your name and parentage. If the look on Kurama's face was any indication, the fox was about to completely lose it. Such betrayal. Uzumaki Mido did not betray you. Naruto didn't know why he felt this way, but he was offended by the notion. She did not betray your trust. She cared for you, Kyuubi. The others, even Ajaya-sama, disapproved, but Uzumaki Mido she knew love for you. You were more than just a tool to her, Kyuubi. Naruto gripped his fists tightly as he walked closer into Kurama's reach, essentially putting himself at the Bijk's mercy. She did not share the knowledge you entrusted her with out of spite. She did it because she hoped you would one day be treated with more decency and regarded as more than a monster. Kurama's eyes bulged and all anger left him immediately. The fox settled down, lying down on the ground as it processed the information. Are you alright, Kyuubi? Naruto asked tentatively. You know my name, why not use it? Naruto let out a laugh. You permitted only Uzumaki Mido to call you by your name. I do not wish to offend you. You say you do not wish to offend me, but do you not realize I am the one responsible for the death of your parents? Kurama appeared to be irritated by his host's calm disposition, as though he had expected a confrontation. I haven't forgotten, Naruto shook his head. I saw you doing it, he added in quieter voice. Again, Kurama's eyes bulged. Then why do you show me kindness if you saw me killing your parents in an attempt to kill you? Because I understand it would only be natural for you want to prevent capture no matter what the situation. I can't fault you for wanting to be free, and because I have no qualms about being a Jinchuriki, Naruto answered truthfully to Kurama's visible surprise. I do not see you as a tool or a monster or even a weapon. No matter how upset I am over the fact you killed my parents. You are a part of me and I am a part of you, and that is what matters now. You speak wise words, but this wisdom was taught to you by a relic who sees you as a tool and a weapon, Kurama challenged, clearly irritated by his host's simplicity. Yes, Naruto agreed easily. But that does not stop me from understanding the truth. One day Ajaya-sama will no longer be around and it will fall on me to make my own decisions. This is one of them. And what is this decision exactly? Kurama asked, intrigued. Naruto gave another smile, and Kurama only now noticed how odd it was, as though the child had not smiled once before their meeting. I've decided I certainly will not become your master. Then what will you become? Your partner and your friend. Naruto's oddly smile turned into an even odder grin. It was an awkward smile others might have found grotesque and off-putting, but Kurama found it endearing. So much so Kurama couldn't help but part his massive fangs into something that resembled a smile. And what makes you think I will accept you? Your awkward smile, Naruto said with a raised finger. You should really work on that. Kurama burst out laughing, as did Naruto. Very well, I sense no malice in your heart, Uzumaki Naruto. I shall accept you as my partner, provided you swear you will never betray me. I will never do anything to hurt you, I swear it on my life, Naruto said with a serious expression. Provided you promise me the same. Then we have an agreement, Kurama acknowledged extended a massive claw towards Naruto. I will be your friend and partner for life, Uzumaki Naruto. And I yours, kick. Kurama, the fox fell in. You may call me by my one true name. Kurama, Naruto nodded with a smile as he gripped and shook Kurama's claw. Your name suits you. As does yours suit you, Naruto. Hours later, Hattori grew restless as he paced before Naruto who remained in his meditative state. What is the meaning of this? Hattori repeated for the umpteenth time. The plan had been a short meeting with the fox, a meet and greet that shouldn't have taken longer than a few moments, and yet the boy remained still for half a day. Could he have done the unspeakable and released the fox? No, of course not. Hattori quickly dismissed the possibility out loud, chiding himself for his fears. The boy was far too intelligent to fall victim to the fox's wit. And even if he wasn't, the boy knew who to obey. Hattori considered waking the boy forcefully many times, but that did not strike him as a good idea. Who knew what would happen? Mito had always made a point of total solitude in her chamber. Hattori could not begin to imagine the chaos he could possibly cause if he even shook the boy. Damn you and your insolence, child. It was just as he said it when chakra, bright crimson-orange chakra, exploded from Naruto in all directions, tossing Hattori in the air. A shroud of chakra enveloped Naruto and 9 tails shot out from the small of his back and curled around him in a protective barrier. Hattori let out a pained growl as he landed on his old bones with a solid thud. He quickly scrambled to his knees, his eyes widened at the sight of his heir. What is this? He exclaimed raspily as Naruto's eyes opened. Rather than blue, the young Jinchuriki's eyes were red and slit. Kickby. No, Ajay-sama, Naruto said in a calm, baritone voice as he shook his head and the chakra tails unfurled. It was an odd sight to say the least. Kurama has not taken over. What is the meaning of this? Hattori demanded in the raspy scream. The plan was to meet. Forgive me, Ajay-sama, but we took quite a liking to one another, Naruto interrupted Hattori for the first time in life. We have come to an agreement that we shall fight side by side as partners and friends, and more importantly, equals. Hattori's old eyes looked as though they were about to bulge of their sockets. What? He exclaimed. The seal. He then added hurriedly. What did you do to the seal, boy? I modified it, Naruto revealed with slight reluctance. Hattori gasped and choked on his spittle. Do not worry, Ajay-sama. I modified only a little to enable Kurama to speak to me directly. When did you learn how to do such a thing? Hattori demanded, irate. I did not teach you how to do metal with a seal of a caliber such as yours. Naruto knew better than to smile or even give a minute indication of smugness with Hattori. The old man was clearly displeased and practically foaming at the mouth with rage, as though he was about to have a stroke. I memorized the foundations of the Tekmfkin stolen from Kumagakure and modified my seal to allow Kurama and myself a means of direct communication, he repeated as he added more details. I also modified the Hakifkin my father created to make it easier for myself to borrow Kurama's chakra and to allow Kurama to come out and materialize a body when necessary. Those two are the main principles I've changed, however there is one final aspect of Hakifkin I've changed, but that will not become relevant for a long time. I call it Haki Tekmfkin Shiki. Hattori's bulging threatened to pop out of their sockets in complete and utter shock as he struggled for a response. The 8 trigrams iron armor seal method sounded absurd on the face of it. What made it even more unbelievable was the fact a 10-year-old, genius or not, was capable of creating one moment, Hattori said as he regained his voice. Does this mean he discovered my own modifications? No, that's impossible. As gifted as he may be, my own modifications are as perfect as modifications to a seal ever could be. There is no way why this child would have spotted them. Irela calmed himself, confident his heir had not noticed his adjustments. How will the Kickby materialize a body? He then demanded. The fox's yin chakra was sealed for good, how will he be able to perform such a feat without yin-yang release? And what is this last change you speak of? Answer me, child, and quickly, before I truly lose my temper. Naruto flinched but answered promptly nonetheless. Both questions have the same answer, Ajay-sama, he began to explain. Well, it is true Kurama in theory cannot materialize a real body due to the imbalance in his chakra as a result of my father sealing his yin chakra. I have modified the Hakifkin to convert the yang chakra Kurama still possesses into yin chakra, which Kurama can then mold into yin-yang chakra in order to materialize. Hattori remained silent as he listened, for once not interrupting his heir, thus Naruto continued explaining. This will work assuming Kurama's soul can still remember the feeling of yin chakra and use that experience to successfully convert some of his yang chakra into yin chakra. In a sense, my connection with Kurama will grant me a Kekkei Genkai like the Yonbi, Sangak, and its container. In theory, I will be able to perform yin and yin-yang release. If the Kickby materializes, then he would have to halve his yang chakra to create perfect balance between yin and yang, Hattori stated, to which Naruto nodded affirmatively. Does that not make him weaker? In secret, Hattori could barely contain himself. Yin-yang release. That is the power only the Rikiden Sennin was capable of. This is too good to be true. Naruto gave another indication of his head. Under normal circumstances, yes, but as I grow older, my chakra reserves will become more vast, thus I will be capable of lending Kurama my yang chakra, and he will be able to convert his own into yin chakra, while at the same using enough of mine to reach his former power. That remains a theory, Hattori bit out venomously. Do you understand what you have done, child? Suddenly and impulsively, Hattori struck Naruto across the face with as much force his old bones could muster, sending the youngster hurtling and bounding across the floor. Naruto came to painful stop but picked himself up, refusing to hold his stinging cheek as he fell completely silent. He knew better than to talk back to his grandfather. If he did, there were means by which Hattori could inflict pain that required no physical contact whatsoever. And he had been on the receiving end of such punishment enough times to remember exactly how horrible it was. Your life is now fully entwined with that of the fox. You have indefinitely jeopardized my ambitions. Hattori shouted at him, coating him with spittle as he exhaled deeply. I am sorry, Ajay-sama, Naruto apologized with a low bow. I merely tried to accelerate your plans for me. Hattori spat on the ground, letting out a sound of utter disappointment as he turned back to Naruto with a resentful glare. You have put yourself at the beast's mercy now that you have merged your power. I told you to simply meet the beast, not to befriend it like my fool sister. In the pit of his stomach, Naruto felt a hot sensation. Kurama clearly did not like the remark in regards to his first-inch Kriki. Kurama, please calm down. Ajay-sama is upset, he doesn't mean it. I wish to destroy this relic, Kurama replied through their mental connection. Why do you allow him to treat you like this? You could destroy him in an instant if you wished. I do not want to harm him, Kurama. He is the only biological family I have left. Are you listening, boy, or is the fox polluting your mind with his filth? Hattori demanded as he took steps closer as though he were about to strike him again. Are you? I am listening, Ajay-sama, Naruto replied obediently as always. I will not let Kurama sway me from what it is you want me to do. Uzushi Agakure will be revived, according to your plans, Ajay-sama. I will do whatever is necessary to make our ambitions comes true. By any means necessary. Hattori lowered his hand he had raised to strike the boy and exhaled deeply. This was the first time Naruto had sounded so sincere about agreeing to wanting to follow his plans. Good, was all he said simply as he turned his back on Naruto. You will be able to control the Kikbi's powers sooner than expected if what you say is true, he stated. Then our plans must accelerate to accommodate that fact. Naruto nodded. Yes, Ajay-sama. 1 year later, another year had passed and Hattori had since began to train Naruto's Taijutsu, an area he had previously been lax in educating Naruto on, as the boy's body grew at a stubbornly slow pace. Being too old to train the boy himself and Taji not being up to scratch after a decade of inactivity, Hattori had no choice but to rely on some kinjutsu of his own. The Edo Tensei. A jutsu he helped the Nidaime Hokage, Senju Tabarama, to develop. However, it was far too risky to do it himself, thus he had Taji master the jutsu under his guidance. It would not have been possible had it not been for his stroke of brilliance in temporarily linking Naruto's chakra to his surrogate mothers through a seal designed by Uzumaki generations ago. Rather than used by the Uzumaki themselves, as they had inherited incredible chakra reserves from their Rikidem Sennin ancestry, they sold the designs of these seals to Kusagakure, which once stood at the top of the shinobi world. 2. It had taken a while for Taji to leave the island and bring back suitable sacrifices, but at last everything fell into place. Hattori was exceedingly anxious. He had not performed this jutsu for many years, not because out of some putrid sense of morality, but rather a general abhorrence of such perverse jutsu that meddled with the cosmic balance of life and death. Still, he reasoned with himself that it was a necessity. While Naruto had clearly inherited his father's physique, it would go to waste if he did not cultivate it soon. Are you ready, boy? Hattori called as they stood in a clearing far from the village. Standing about 50 feet away from his ancestor and surrogate, Naruto gave a curt nod. Yes, Ajay-sama, he answered. His voice betrayed his anxiety, but fortunately Hattori did not complain as he too felt it. The relic looked at Taji, whose eyes were blank, unfocused. Devoid of any conscience. At his nod, Taji proceeded to go through a string of hand seals and placed her hands on the gritty dirt. Kuchius. Edo Tensei. Her voice sounded almost robotic. As her palms touched the dirt, Naruto felt a tremendous pull on his chakra as it surged out of him and into his surrogate mother, who then channeled the chakra into the forbidden jutsu. It left Naruto with a foul feeling throughout his body. How he hated the seal causing it and wanted to rip the skin tag off his body, but Hattori had forbidden him from doing so, and thus he endured as he always did, his jaws clenched and fists tightened. A neat row of sacrifices sank through the earth, each replaced a moment later by white coffins that shot up moments later, all numbered 1 to 4. The coffin lids exploded outward simultaneously as 4 figures stepped out of them. Hattori cackled with glee at the sight of his deceased clansmen. Obtaining their DNA acquired a mere trip to the Uzumaki tombs in the labyrinth below the village. Had his body been capable of doing so, he would have revived them a long time ago. "Where am I?" demanded the tallest and most handsome of the four. His voice was deep, his skin flawless, and his red hair tied in a ponytail fell below his shoulders. He wore red body mesh and black fitting armor with uzumaki emblems and tassels, and carried a long katana on his hip. "Ah, yes," Hattori continued his manic laughter. "Uzumaki Hae, the only Uzumaki to have ever been born with the Jinten Kekkei Genkai. 1. A child born as a result of rape. Uzumaki Hae was born to an Uzumaki clanswoman who didn't know who the father was, as there had been multiple perpetrators. Hae's mother, an Uzumaki spy, died 2 years after giving birth in the highlands far from Yuzu no Kuni, leaving her son to be put in an orphanage until word reached the Uzumaki clan, who came to collect him years later after reports came in of a 6-year-old child with fierce red hair and an affinity for Jinten. Under the tutelage of the Uzumaki, Hae became to be revered as one of the world's greatest swordsmen. His exploits were well known in literature of nearly 100 years ago. Oh, what is this? Could this be the Edo Tensei? Another wondered out loud. Significantly shorter than Hae, this Uzumaki was of a stockier build and had a broad set of shoulders and a thick scar running vertically over his left eye. He wore a gray and blue sleeveless combat guy and simple trousers. He had a receding hairline, and his hair was the same shade of Uzumaki red as Hae's, but much shorter. Naruto's eyes narrowed on the sight of second Uzumaki, recognizing his appearance immediately from the stories once told him as a boy. "Uzumaki Gozu. You once attempted to assassinate the Nidaime Reikage. And I failed miserably." Gozu pointed a thick finger to his chest, under his muscle shirt ran thick scars covering his entire torso. "And he left me with a mark to remember him by even after my death." In the back of his mind, Naruto wondered if Gozu was really a member of the Uzumaki. If his appearance alone wasn't out of the norm, his easygoing demeanor certainly was. "Yes, I remember having to clean up after you," the third resurrected Uzumaki chimed in. He was the second tallest and had slim build, long hair that covered his left eye, and a perpetual sneer of arrogance plastered on his face. He wore traditional white and blue robes with a Uzumaki crest and tassel. He carried a long BM staff in his gauze-wrapped hands, a whip on his hip, and a large orange scroll on his back. "Uzumaki Tenjin, you have undoubtedly heard of me," the resurrected Uzumaki assumed. "The youngest Uzumaki to ever attain Seals Master status." "You mean the second youngest Seals Master?" Hattori fell in forcefully with a growing snide smirk of his own. "The first would be me, dear cousin. I think you actually survived this long. You have not aged well," Tenjin drawled with unveiled distaste. "You have undoubtedly summoned us through the use of Edo Tensei," the most clever of the resurrected deducted immediately. "I assume we were the best DNA matches you could find." Hattori neither confirmed or denied this, thought it appeared Tenjin did not care anyway, as his eye fell on the fourth and last of the resurrected. "What is this misfit doing here?" Tenjin snarled. "Uzumaki hero," Hattori whispered the name with clear exhilaration. Naruto recognized the name immediately and frowned, uncertain of what to think or say. Perhaps the second most gifted ninjutsu specialist the Uzumaki have ever known. Hiro looked like most Uzumaki, his hair was red, going up in gravity-defying spikes like Naruto, his skin lightly tanned and for the most part unscarred. He wore the traditional blue Uzushi Agakure battle armor over baggy, white robes, with the Uzumaki spiral emblem. The second. Hae spoke with a light frown of confusion. He looked to the other resurrected Uzumaki for answers. "Isn't it obvious?" Tenjin said, glaring at Naruto as he sized him up. "This child has surpassed even Hiro." "Interesting," Hiro spoke for the first time. Naruto noted how calculated and reserved he sounded, and while faint, he could hear a touch of condescension. "Interesting, is it, traitor?" Hattori growled at Hiro with contempt. The other resurrected Uzumaki seemed to agree with Hattori, even Hae, who looked rather odd with his damning glare, accentuated even more by the black sclera and wide irid eyes as a result of the Edo Tensei. "So it is true, what you said, Ajay-sama." Naruto knew the story of Uzumaki Hiro very well. Hattori had told him only once, but the hatred in his voice had seen to it, Naruto would never forget it. Uzumaki Hiro was born to Uzumaki branch house parentage. Growing up, he soon proved to be a prodigy amongst prodigies, a true genius in every sense. Hiro was born with such a strong chakra, his chakra chains, an ability known only to Uzumaki, first appeared when he was but an infant, much to the shock of the Uzumaki clan, as the average Uzumaki usually awakened their chakra chains during their teenage years. Predictably, he was immediately put in advanced ninjutsu training and excelled greatly. Then, one day in the beginning of the First Great Shinobi War, Uzumaki Hiro deserted his comrades, who were ambushed soon after his disappearance. Hiro was found dead weeks later in a valley in Earth Country. Fortunately, before Iwa forces could recover his body, he had set his body up with a reverse 4 symbol seal in the case of his death. As a testament to his prowess, Uzumaki Hiro took down over 1,000 shinobi with him. "Why are we here?" Uzumaki Tenjin demanded, making an unpleasant noise as he sucked his teeth impatiently. What do you want, Hattori? Hattori sneered at his cousin. You always lacked patience, Tenji, he chided. Nonetheless, the relic clapped his hands, signaling the resurrected shinobi to listen up. I have brought you all back to realm of the living for one reason and one reason only. And what would that be? Gozu inquired nonchalantly. Out of all the Uzumaki brought from the dead, he seemed to mind it the least. In fact, it was as if he enjoyed being alive again. Uzumaki Naruto, Hattori said simply, pointing at the blonde Uzumaki in question. He may not look like us, but he is one of us. He is the son of the Yondaime Hokage and one of our own, Uzumaki Kushina. As you undoubtedly have already gathered, he gave a great sigh as he said it, Uzushio and the Uzumaki are no more. So they won. Hiro glared at Hattori with intense hatred. Naruto could not imagine how it was justified. I told you fools what would happen, but you didn't listen. Now look where we are. Be quiet, traitor. Tenjin bellowed, raising his BM staff threateningly. The ceremonial Uzumaki emblem tassels shook as though the staff was tuned to its wielder's emotions. You have no right to criticize us after you abandoned your own. I should destroy you right now. You stubborn fool, Hiro spat contemptuously as he slid into a fighting stance. You dare to threaten me? Enough. Hattori bellowed angrily, and the resurrected fell silent immediately. What has happened in the past cannot be changed, but we have an opportunity for the future. That opportunity lives in this child, Uzumaki Naruto. None of them made any comment, instead they looked back to Naruto again, staring at him as Hattori spoke. I have brought you back to aid me in teaching him in our ways. Through him, the Uzumaki can live once again, and Uzushiogakure can be restored. You haven't changed at all, Hattori, Hiro's voice was as cold as ice. The resurrected Uzumaki made no attempt to hide his utter disgust. This fixation with tradition and protocol, all of these rules, don't you ever get tired of them? Hattori opened his mouth to respond angrily, but Hiro already turned to Naruto. I have been in your position, Uzumaki Naruto. I know what it is like to have your entire life dictated to you. Doesn't it anger you, fill you with rage, how much you must do, and how little choice you have? This life without freedom, if you can even call it a life, is a wretched thing, is it not? So that is why you betrayed the clan, Naruto realized as the reason for Uzumaki Hiro's betrayal became clear. It was a strange notion to him, but it made sense in a way he couldn't quite put in words. He had never really thought of living his life in any other way than he did now. The more he realized how odd his life was, the more he realized he could relate to Hiro's past predicament. It scared him. Was there something wrong with living a life of routine, waking up early, eating the nutritious meals prepared for him by his surrogate, reading, training and resting in accordance to Hattori's schedule? Naruto opened his mouth without being clear with what he wanted to say, so he fell silent. You want to be free, don't you? Hiro asked quietly. His voice took a more sympathetic and gentle tone. Free from all of these responsibilities and duties. Then kill this old relic, and Hiro's eyes suddenly rolled back into his head and he fell forward, collapsing with a resounding thud. Insolent fool, Hattori trembled with rage and breathed heavily. Even now he dares to defy our ways. Trampling on Uzumaki protocols never sat well with the relic, and it could easily set him off into a fit of rage. It was exactly why Naruto made a habit out of never bringing up his resentment of certain aspects of his training. I'm assuming you've got ways to control him, otherwise you just wasted a lot of chakra resurrecting this filth, Tenjin commented from the sidelines. Of course I have my ways. Hattori took offense to the comment. Now then, I'm assuming you three will comply freely. Ozu gave a shrug and stifled a yawn. Death is boring, he said simply. I'll comply if it means I'll be able to see the revival of our clan. While I am not particularly pleased with being brought back, Haie began as he placed a hand on his okatana's hilt, I will serve my clan once again. The two looked at Tenjin, who rolled his eyes and dramatically threw his arms in the air. Fine, fine. Seeing as I don't have much of a choice anyway, I'll agree to help you, so long as that filthy traitor keeps his distance. That won't be a problem, Hattori assured. 2 years later. Naruto, age 12. Jiraiya had once again returned from his long spell of absence. Safe to say, he was rather impressed with Taji for raising such a fine and powerful young man, although he expressed some concern on Naruto's detached disposition. Well, he's only got me and Hattori-san, so it can't be helped. He's a little different from others his age, Taji reasoned rather defensively. And with me stuck doing research and Hattori being too old to even care, he's usually left to his own devices, she said, rather defensive of her son. I can hardly take credit for how strong he is, Jiraiya-san, Naruto mostly teaches himself. I don't think there's anything else I can teach him. This prompted Jiraiya to stay for a few more days, in which he decided to spend most of his time with Naruto to get to know his godson better as well as teach him a thing or two. Naturally, it did not go unnoticed by the sage how advanced Naruto's taijutsu was, and if that weren't strange enough, he mastered summoning toads within a matter of hours. It was almost as if he had done it before. But then, Jiraiya thought, who would have taught him how to summon? He had seen Taji's file, and as skilled as she was, she had not signed a summoning contract. Geez, you sure pack a punch, kid, Jiraiya commented, shaking his hand to get the blood flowing once again, as Naruto flew back and landed in a skidding crouch. Alright, I think I've seen enough. Taji's done a great job raising you. You're finally ready to come home. Expecting a smile, Jiraiya was unnerved by the frown Naruto shot him. What is it, Naruto? This is my home, Jiraiya Kimfu, Naruto said icily. Simply because I was born in Konoha does not mean it is my home. How could it be if I spent only a few days there before you asked my mother to throw her life away to raise me in solitude? Jiraiya's brows furrowed. Do you resent me, Naruto? No, Naruto answered truthfully. Your insensitiveness towards my mother's sacrifice and my home, however, offends me. I believe Ajaya-sama would disapprove. Is that so? Jiraiya approached the youth with a curious feeling budding in the pit of his stomach. Hours later, Taji and Jiraiya were seated in the house whilst Naruto was out to find firewood. Go back? She asked, the notion of actually returning having clearly not been expected so soon. He is only 12 years old, Jiraiya-san. He'll be 13 soon, meaning he will able to graduate the academy in Konoha and become an official shinobi, Jiraiya told her. Whilst she mulled it over, he looked around him and found that the house, despite being cluttered with books and scrolls, was in excellent shape. Now that he thought of it, the ruins of Uzumaki seemed to have been cleaned up. I'm not sure, Jiraiya. Jiraiya gave a sigh, he had hoped not to have to use this particular card. Look, Taji, I know you've grown attached to Naruto, but don't forget I'm also his godparent, and the agreement was that he would return to Konoha once he was able to defend himself. The scandalized look of outrage in Taji's face was a clear sign he shouldn't have gone there. So what? You've hardly gotten to know him, Jiraiya, you're almost never there. How would you know the first thing about him? Why does he have to return now? He's not ready. From what I've seen, he's well beyond the level his peers in Konoha will be at. He's incredibly powerful, Taji. He's ready, he said with a finality they both knew she could not defy. Then, with a softer tone, he added. Look, this will be a good thing for Naruto. He needs to be in contact with kids his own age, or he's going to end up being completely incapable of interacting with other people, Taji. Do you really want that? There were no further arguments after that. In a few months Naruto would return to Konoha on time to graduate with peers his own age. Not long after hammering out the details, Jiraiya once again left with a promise of meeting them in Konoha. You embark upon your journey soon, boy. Naruto knelt before Hattori and bowed his head. Yes, Ajaya-sama. Jiraiya Kimfu deems it prudent I go and enroll in the Konoha Academy for Shinobi Arts. I believe he wishes for me to interact with others my own age. Such foolishness. Hattori growled. The ancient Uzumaki released a breath of frustration. It matters not, this simply accelerates my plan. Naruto looked up to face his grandfather, looking him in the eye. Your plan, Ajaya-sama? Naruto asked. Hattori never discussed his intentions with Naruto. He never so much as mentioned he had anything planned outside of Uzumaki. No, all he ever told Naruto was of the greatness of the Uzumaki, the power they once held in the world. Ajaya-sama, may I ask what plans you speak of? No. Hattori barked in his raspy voice. But I shall tell you, child. I shall tell you the true purpose of your training. Naruto's eyes widened. It was an uncharacteristic act in comparison with his usual monotone, stoic character. Listen closely, child, Hattori told him, I have told you a great many recounts of Uzumaki history. I have told you of the Rikiden Sennin, the creator of the shinobi world and ancestor of many clans, from the Uchiha to Senju and the Uzumaki. You have sat on my knees and listened closely as I told you of the true world, the shinobi world which is on the verge of collapsing. I sense it. Hattori's outburst was sudden, and he could hear the madness in his grandfather's voice. And now, as the day of your return to Konoha approaches, I will finally reveal to you what your true purpose is. Naruto did not dare to speak and incur Hattori's wrath, and so remained silent, as he had been taught to do when the older Uzumaki spoke. Your mission is to go to Konoha and create a support system for the revival of Uzumaki. Upon arriving in Konoha, you will make yourself useful to the Sandaime. That whelp has always had soft heart for children, he believes strongly in the will of fire, thus he will not distrust you the way he should. Naruto nodded to this, albeit hesitantly with the concept of interacting with other people. Hattori frowned, but made no comment and continued. You will provide the Sandaime with your revised Genjutsu plan, you know the one I mean. Naruto nodded obediently. Then, after you have gained his trust, you will set out to establish alliances with Konoha's influential clans. Perhaps it is a good thing you will return to the academy, there is bound to be a few heirs you can rally to your side. To what end, Ajaya-sama? Naruto asked, his head bowed obediently once more. You will especially attempt to gain the favor of the daughters of Konoha's clan heads, child. Naruto stiffened at the notion, prompting Hattori to sneer with disgust. Such hesitance is beneath you, child. What immodesty is there to this? Only a few years ago you would have had no choice in who you were to wed. Of course, only a few years ago was a lot longer for Naruto than it was for Hattori. You will one day father many children with suitable women. That is your responsibility as the head of this dying clan when I am gone. You have known this for quite some time. Forgive me, Ajayi-sama. Hattori snarled but continued. Do you follow me so far, child? Naruto nodded. Then repeat to me what I just instructed you to do. My mission is to make myself useful to Sandaime. Upon arrival in Konohagakure no Sado, Naruto droned obediently. I will earn his trust and minimize his suspicion of me. Then what? I will then proceed to establish a support network. I will befriend heirs of influential clans and aim to seduce the daughters of particularly influent clans. I believe this is why you had me research the hidden jutsu belonging to Konoha's most prominent clans, such as the Yamanaka Shintention Jutsu, Ajayi-sama. Indeed, Hattori confirmed. Then, am I also correct in assuming you expect me to reveal my knowledge of these jutsu to the Sandaime to gain his trust? Naruto inferred. Hattori growled approvingly. You are correct, child. Once Hiruzen believes you are easily manipulated and you will make sure to give him this impression, boy, Hattori warned threateningly, he will believe he can make you one of his followers. Naturally, you will appear as if you hang on his every word and when the time is right you will ensure he will support the revival of Uzumaki. Naruto bowed his head obediently as Hattori continued to reveal the details of his plans to his heir. It was evident in the way Hattori spoke he had been planning this for years, almost as soon as he first laid eyes on Naruto when he was but a baby. Naruto remained silent as his ancestor drilled him with instructions, nodding once every few minutes as Hattori dove into specifics. The plan was relatively simple to understand, yes, but it would take a lot of doing. It could take him years before he saw anything coming to fruition. Naruto understood this quite clearly, but he had long since been taught to dedicate his life to revival of Uzumaki and the Uzumaki clan. Child, it is of the utmost importance you forge an alliance with the Hokage clan. In order to make our ambitions come true, it is imperative that you do. The Hokage clan? Naruto repeated with genuine confusion. Why is that, Ajayi-sama? Hattori beckoned Naruto to follow him as he crawled to his feet. Come, I shall show you. Naruto got to his feet and followed Hattori as the old man led him to his house, where he knew a hidden passage would bring them to the underground labyrinths of Uzumaki. Uzumaki underground, come quickly, boy. Hattori hobbled past the iron-wrought double doors into a spacious area equipped with technology commonly found in laboratories, large sources of microscopes, organs conserved in jars, scalpels and other surgical tools and much more. Unsurprisingly, given Hattori's age, albeit organized the laboratory was rather filthy. What stood out the most in the laboratory was the facing the doors. Instead of concrete, the wall was filled with square containers with preservative fluids that contained pieces of flesh and vials, filled with blood and other fluids and eyeballs. There were dozens of them aligned in a neat row with age plaques beneath them, upon which were specific details were written. Naruto's eyes narrowed immediately as they recognized some of the names on the plaques. Ajayi-sama. Hattori gave a mad cackle, delighted in his heir's surprise. Beautiful, isn't it? Isn't it? The relic hobbled over to the wall of specimens, palming the table before it as he reached it. This, my boy, is the true reason behind the silent massacre of Uzumaki. Ch3. Purpose. He was a blur of black, traveling at an incredible speed enough to blow leaves of trees. His eyes were vacant and unaffected by the speed-induced tunnel vision for his mind was elsewhere, but his body knew the woods and the land by memory, acquired over the years of his childhood. He was at war with himself. And the more he fought with himself the greater his speed increased, as though he were attempting to flee from his turmoil. He was fast like the wind. It was not very surprising given his parentage, especially his father, Namikaze Minato, widely known and accepted as the fastest man alive. Even Uzumaki Naruto needed reprieve once in a while, he relieved his concerns by running. There weren't many things that got him worked up or frustrated, but when he ran. And he was so terribly fast. It was as if he was born to run, always on the move, always doing something, never meant to stay still. But such was unbecoming of the heir to the great and noble Uzumaki clan. Hattori would not accept his antics, not even when he was a playful child filled with joy and curious wonder. From a young age, he was taught forcefully how to conduct himself as expected of an Uzumaki in the face of troubling news. Calm and collected. Regal. That was his duty as the soon-to-be leader of the Uzumaki clan. But how could anyone remain calm and collected after learning what he had learned only moments ago? The truth weighed heavy on his mind. Flashback. This, my boy, is the true reason behind the silent massacre of Uzumaki. His eyes widened, scanning the contents located in the wall of the room. He slowly approached the wall as he examined the contents of the containers. He had no idea what the fleshly samples were of or who the vials of blood belonged to, but the eyeballs suspended in preservatives were easy enough to recognize. He felt an eerie sensation run down his spine. Sharingan and Byakugan eyes stared at him as though the ghosts of their former owners were gazing into his very soul. Beautiful, isn't it? Hattori's voice cut through the silence like cold steel, startling the youth. Naruto turned his eyes away from the wall with no small amount of shock still evident in his eyes. I don't, he tried, confused. I do not expect you to understand, Hattori silenced him before he could even form a single coherent sentence. I shall explain everything to you, my heir. I shall explain to you that which only few in this world have ever known. You should be honored. I am, Aja-sama. Hattori struggled to find his seat on the table, thus Naruto stepped forward and grabbed the ancient man under the arms and sat him down, pretending not to notice the relic's indignant glare. What are our words, boy? Knowledge? Power? Truth? Naruto answered the question on mechanical, rehearsed reflex. He had said them many times before. His clan's motto was ingrained in his very being. Through knowledge we will gain power, through power we will learn truth. Yes, and what is this truth we search? Naruto frowned. Hattori had never posed this question before. And yet somehow he felt he knew the answer. He did not doubt how or why as his grandfather had taught him well. The truth is everything and nothing. It is both the answer and the question. The truth is all-encompassing. It has neither a beginning nor an end. It simply is. Spoken like a true uzumaki. Hattori nodded with approval, there was a hint of pride in his eyes and voice. The wall you see behind me is my life's work. It is the sum of generations upon generations of research done by Uzumaki in order to uncover the truth of this world. Naruto remained silent as Hattori continued, knowing that he was expected only to listen and not to speak. My father brought me down here when I was your age as his father had done with him and so on. This place is known as the Room of Truth. In this place, and others like it, the Uzumaki have dedicated hundreds of years to decode the Rikiden Sennin's influence upon the world. Hattori looked over his shoulders and gestured to the wall in a theatrical gesture. Naruto counted at least 100 containers of samples. He did not wish to know the details as to how his clan had come in possession of them. He was at unease and he knew, to his shame, that it showed though his ancestor made no comment or even sneered as he usually would have and instead continued with his story. The Rikiden Sennin saved the world from a terrible threat at the cost of his life. This I have told you this many times. Before his death, he fathered 2 sons, the elder brother inherited his eyes and the younger his body, the same body the Uzumaki and Senju inherited. This, too, I have told you many times. What I have not told you, however, is that the Uzumaki clan dedicated generations of research on unlocking the Rikiden Sennin's powers, more specifically, his ability to create matter out of nothing. Ah yes, I speak of the power you now possess a fraction of through the fox. Naruto's eyes widened as it dawned on him exactly why the Uzumaki were feared, what they were feared for. His ability, the power of yin-yang release, was possible to him only because of Kurama. He shuddered to think of an army of Uzumaki wielding the power the sage of the 6 paths possessed, the power he now possessed. Wars could be won with only a handful of people with such power, perhaps even by just one. Yes. You can see it now. The world feared us for our minds, child. They feared us because they knew we had the potential to herald a second coming of the Rikiden Sennin. As the years went by we gathered more information and our libraries grew larger and amassed such vast knowledge we came closer to finding a way to develop the same powers the Rikiden Sennin possessed, the power of a god. But it was not easy, boy, with great difficulty, chance and luck, we managed to track down the lineage of both of the Rikiden Sennin's sons and for centuries, we observed the mutations, documenting what we found. We attempted to replicate what we could, though with little success. For the longest of times, we failed to make progress. It was simply too difficult, too consuming of our time and resources, and for all our efforts they yielded far too little results. It wasn't until the shinobi system changed that we had any luck. As wars continued to pull the world apart, a matter we had no interest in and purposefully hid ourselves from, kings became daimon, and they began to establish shinobi villages, sworn to protect their lands. I see. Naruto immediately caught on with an understanding nod. The descendants of the Rikiden Sennin flocked together in these villages. Indeed. Hattori affirmed with another look of approval. It became much easier, now, to infiltrate, to observe and to document. It all became so easy. Hattori cackled like a madman but a moment before his laughter died and hatred struck his eyes. It became too easy. We became complacent, arrogant and foolish. Hattori spat the word as though they were venom. We were found out and the world took to arms in an outrage that would echo through the ages. Do you understand what I am saying, Uzumaki Naruto? The first great shinobi war was caused by the Uzumaki clan. Unclear on how he was supposed to process or even begin to accept this shocking and disturbing news, Naruto mulled over the information. He was raised to believe the Uzumaki were a people of knowledge, yes, but to think the knowledge they pursued was one known only to a man likened to a god, and the methods they used to pursue this knowledge. I never once taught you to believe the Uzumaki were saints, Hattori said quietly. In truth, Yuzushi Agakure was hidden not only for our safety, but also because of our need to preserve secrecy. We hid ourselves from the world as we garnered more knowledge, developed more weapons, and jutsu. In the end, we were so involved in our own affairs that we were not ready for the onslaught brought down upon us by the rest of the world. They came for us. They eradicated us. And then they destroyed all the evidence. The relic clenched his veiny fists in unbridled hatred. Our name has no meaning anymore, child. Once it would have made entire armies crumble in fear. And now? No one will know whom you speak of. Our enemies and even our former allies destroyed all evidence that we ever existed. It was one of the terms in the treaty that ended the war we caused. The Uzumaki have been forgotten. 1. Suffice to say, Naruto would never be the same after learning the true cause for the silent massacre of Yuzushi Agakure. He once believed his people were a proud people that sought knowledge and wisdom first and foremost. And now he didn't know what to think. All he knew was that the Uzumaki, for all their greatness, were not necessarily great people. Still, he decided after a long moment of silent deliberation. Perhaps the Uzumaki were no saints, if Hattori was any indicator. That was not surprising, and perhaps their ambitions were obscure and their methods deceitful, but that was in the past. He had to look towards the future. One day soon he would be the head of the revived Uzumaki clan and the revived Yuzushi Agakure. That was his purpose. That is what he believed to be the only thing that truly mattered now. Our enemies made the same mistake we did, Naruto said in a whisper to the relic. Yuzashio's enemies were as foolish as we were. They did not exterminate the entirety of Yuzu no Kuni. You said it yourself, Ajaya-sama, there are other Uzumaki out there, scattered across the world. And it shall be your task to bring them back and enlist their help in the revival of Yuzushi Agakure. Hattori stroked his beard as he eyed Naruto. The few that stayed with me left many years ago. Your mother was one of the last to leave. The time has come for you to recall them. And together, you will restore our clan, our way of life and our purpose. Naruto bowed his head deeply. Yes, Ajaya-sama. It was just then, when he raised his head, that he saw it. Across the room, suspended in preservative liquid amongst dozens of others containers. The Byakugan with a pattern unlike any other stared at him. Then flashback, Naruto came to a stop as he jumped into a clearing, kicking up a sizable mound of dirt as he came to a grinding halt. Kurama. He clenched his fists as he tried to relax his breathing. I pretended to be at peace with the true nature of my clan for Ajaya-sama's sake, but how can I truly accept this? That is a question I cannot answer for you, Naruto, was the Bijk's response. But perhaps you do not need to. How? The Jinchuriki asked. I am starting to believe Ajaya-sama will not pass anytime soon. His condition hasn't gotten worse at all over the years. That is strange, indeed, Kurama agreed with a thoughtful tone. Be mindful of the relic, Naruto. He does not have your best interest in mind, only that of his own ambitions. I sense the malice in him, but how can you be certain it is directed at me? The fox replied to his question with another. Tell me, Naruto, do you think he would hesitate to take your body for his own if he still had such power in him? He paused for a moment as he gave the question some serious thought. No, I do not think he would hesitate if he could. The fox let out a low growl. You who have the power of the Uzumaki Kusari and through I the power of the sage, indeed, he would sacrifice you within a heartbeat just like he did with that woman. Naruto stiffened. Her name is Taji, Kurama. He hid his resentment poorly. Please try to remember it. The woman who raised you is gone, Naruto. You know this. I know, he forced himself to acknowledge. But I will save her, Kurama. Perhaps, perhaps not. Naruto held his hands in front of him. With these hands and the power you gave me, I will do it. Black flame-like chakra swirled around his left hand, whilst white chakra came to life in his right. Enslavement. 2. Careful and be mindful of balance and purpose. Those were the two prerequisites of yin-yang release. Balance and purpose. Yin and yang needed to coincide in harmonious conditions, and the use of each had to have a purpose. Without either, untold calamities could occur within an instant. But now picture what you want in your mind, carefully. Naruto pressed his palms together as he pictured his desired object down to the tiniest of details, and then held out his right hand and said in a commanding tone. Banbutsu SMZMN. BM. Creation of all things. Staff. Black chakra gave shape to the staff, and white chakra gave it substance. Naruto's fingers grabbed curled on the frame of a tall and intricately designed BM staff, complete with complex engravings and Uzumaki clan tassels. He twirled the staff in his hand, deftly maneuvering it with his fingers as he went through several katas. You will have to improve on your Enslavement if are to ever construct a body for me. I know, Kurama, Naruto replied, breathing heavy. Using his yin-yang release left him winded as he settled down on the grass. If I possessed a Rinnegan it would be considerably easier. Perhaps. Naruto took a deep breath and wiped the sweat off his forehead. Takes it out of you, huh? Said a smug voice. Naruto didn't bother turning. He sensed the resurrected Tenjin long before he arrived and tossed the staff over his shoulder. This should do as a replacement for your old one. Tenjin caught the BM and twirled it in a similar fashion. It never ceases to amaze me how much you have progressed with your yin-yang release. Naruto rather disliked Tenjin. It shouldn't. He stood up and patted the grass off his high-collar jacket. It was marine blue and had the Uzumaki emblem on the back on the tassels hanging from his shoulders and sleeves. Do you need something? Tenjin glared at the heir's back. The woman calls for you. Her name is Taji, Naruto asserted coldly. Eh? Tenjin replied testily. I couldn't care less what the infantile wench is called. Massive chains of chakra shot out of Naruto's back and crashed into the resurrected Uzumaki, driving him through the landscape, ripping up earth and uprooting several trees, before coming to a stop against an exceptionally thick one, around which the chains wrapped Tenjin tightly with enough force to break his spine. Naruto held an outstretched arm, clenching fist as he tightened his chains. You should know your place, cousin. Though Tenjin felt no pain, he felt humiliation. What do you think you're doing, huh? Tenjin's own chains exploded outwards as his body healed automatically. Are you looking for a fight, boy? Naruto's chains circled around him in a hypnotic, serpentine fashion. It was a simple illusion useful against multiple opponents. Tenjin's eyes drooped for a second before his chains unleashed a douse of chakra. You really think my own genjutsu would work on me? He demanded loudly. Such arrogance. For his part, Naruto merely smiled. Only with Tenjin did he let this side of himself out. It was a pleasant way of venting his frustrations. That is just a word made up by weaklings. Angered, Tenjin swung the staff. Fton. Jaikufkshin. Wind release. Adverse wind impact. A powerful blast of concentrated wind barreled towards the blonde. Naruto didn't even need to move as a singular, massive chakra chain leveled in front of him and effortlessly shielded him against the attack. Gee. Tenjin began to twirl the BM in a rapid moment as a blade of wind coated around the weapon. Fton. Hishmk's no Yeba. Wind release. Soaring wind blade. Muishma. The blur of red appeared between them. By means of his shadowless flight, Hiei intercepted the soaring wind blade with a graceful arc with his okatana and redirected it skywards with little difficulty. That's enough, Tenjin. The tall Uzumaki's eyes narrowed on the seal's master. I was done anyway. Tenji sneered as he turned around and disappeared into the forestry. Arrogant little brat. Naruto looked to Hiei expectantly. Yes. Your mother. He didn't have to say more. Naruto's eyes narrowed. I see. He gave a nod to Hiei, who he easily liked more than Tenjin. I'll take care of it. Closing his eyes, Naruto pictured the location where Taji would be, in her room in the recently renovated Uzumaki clan head house, thanks to Gozu's efforts. This was his kind of space-time ninjutsu. Onmum Tensum. While quite useful, the technique required not only his onmumten, but also previously marking the desired location. It was far from perfection, but it would soon be thanks to the data the Uzumaki had covertly collected on the Nidame's space-time ninjutsu. The key to the Onmum Tensum was to disassemble his body through his yin-yang release and reassemble at the location of his mark at the speed of light. As of yet, he could only use it on himself. Though he had some theories on how to expand its use. As the clan heir disappeared, Hiei stared in fascination. Once the blonde Uzumaki disappeared, so did the swordsman. The yin-yang transmission. As he appeared in the room, Taji smiled weakly at her son. Naruto-chan. I'm here, mother, Naruto reassured as he approached her with a hand covered in green chakra. Just rest. Don't say a word. Conserve your strength. He cursed Tenjin for distracting him. Taji nodded weakly and then her eyes went wide and she began to laugh. It was a childish laugh, as though she were a young girl. Moo, Minato-kun. Thanks to you Kushina won't make time for me. She's always running after you. Naruto's eyes widened and the chakra coating his hand faltered. She thinks I'm my father. What continues to ail her? Kurama asked in a rare show of interest. I don't know. These episodes are becoming more frequent as of late. It was frustrating, truly frustrating, and it made him feel helpless, but what could he do when she got like this? Mother? He asked in a concerned voice as Taji fell quiet. She was asleep once more. Naruto let out a sigh of relief. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. The heir was grateful the Uzumaki had gotten their hands on this technique, even if it served as a reminder of how deceitful they were even with their greatest allies, the Senju clan who had invented it. Watch her. There was no need to instruct his clone verbally, but he did it anyway to be certain. You did not find anything the last time you visited the vault. I'll keep looking until I find the answer, he replied determinedly. For as long as it takes. The clone sat on its knees next to Taji and charged green chakra to his hands to soothe her migraine. He stared at the grimacing face of his surrogate mother as she breathed heavily. Naruto sensed Hattori's malice long before the relic hobbled into the medical jutsu section of the vault. Again? The relic asked. Yes, Ajayi-sama, he answered as his eyes continued to scan over the scrolls. Perhaps this time I'll find something. I see. After giving the search a good few minutes, Naruto turned to the relic. There was a question on his mind he had to ask. Ajayi-sama, what is it? Naruto looked from the shelf to the dying Uzumaki. Earlier, when we were in the room of truth, there was something that caught my eye. The Byakugan. Naruto nodded. It had a different pattern. It was like he hesitated for a moment. It reminds me of the Manjukam Sharingan. He had only read descriptions of the Uchiha's evolved jutsu, but he had quite a good idea what they looked like, or at least what Uchiha Izuna's looked like. Not quite, Hattori shook his head as he hobbled towards the exit of the vault. But you are thinking along the correct lines. Naruto eyed the shelf of medical jutsu for a moment and then turned to follow Hattori into the labyrinth. Was that Byakugan an evolved version? You could say it is to the Byakugan what the Manjukam Sharingan is to the Sharingan, Hattori answered vaguely as they continued to move further away from the vault. The eye belonged to Hokage Urehi. We believe he is the only one to have possessed this eye. We believe it was called the Amatsu Byakugan in some corners. Yes, I believe that is what it was called. The heavenly wide eye. It was rather fitting, Naruto thought, seeing as there was a certain angelic quality to the design. Hokage Urehi, the name was familiar, he recalled having read it when researching the Hokage clan. Upon remembering where he knew the name from, his eyes widened. Hokage Urehi was the clan head of the Hokage. He alone knew all of the Jiken's secrets. What else do you remember? Hattori looked at him expectantly. After a moment his face contorted with impatience. Speak, child. Hokage Urehi was said to be the strongest warrior the Hokage have ever produced. He was killed by Uchiha Madara, Naruto said in a low voice as he tried to remember his reading. His death was the cause of the Hokage-Uchiha feud. There were other reasons, but Hokage Urehi's death certainly fueled the fire. I'm sure you remember the strife and civil war that was narrowly avoided once Senju Hashirama stepped in. Naruto nodded. Why did Madara kill Urehi? Hattori stroked his beard. I have no particular theories on that matter. Perhaps Madara killed him for no other reason to test the limits of his power. He risked war for such a reason. Naruto found it hard to believe at first, but then remembered this was the same Madara who had sparked many international disputes and had caused a hatred between Iwa and Konoha, who had once been allies. He also killed the Shodaite Tsuchikage. Madara lived only to prove his strength, didn't he? He was a coward at heart, Kurama growled angrily. Ajay-sama, did Madara know about the Urehi's Byakugan? Hattori continued to stroke his beard and nodded. I suppose he did, he hazarded a guess. It is likely that was exactly why he challenged Hokage Urehi. Madara had killed many great shinobi before and many after Urehi. I would not be surprised if he wanted to measure up his Manjukam Sharingan to the Amatsu Byakugan. What happened to the other eye? Naruto queried. They were now back in the room of truth. Hattori stared at the eye. Madara destroyed it, he answered gruffly. He killed Urehi and left his body to be burnt by the flames of his Amaterasu. He was foolish to do so. There were Uzumaki present. The notion of it didn't sound so strange now that he knew the true nature of the Uzumaki clan. They used Zetsu to observe, didn't they? 3. Zetsu was an application of Uzumaki Kusari to completely and utterly hide one's presence. The chains essentially suppressed chakra to the point not even seasoned sensory ninja could detect the user's presence. The Uzumaki most likely developed it purely for their espionage, he now realized. They did. Hattori did not elaborate further. Fetch it for me, boy. My chains of enlightenment have long since disappeared. There was a tone in his voice his heir couldn't quite comprehend, but he did as he was told. Raising his arm, thin chains came into existence, leaping out of his sleeve to the handle of the container. As he was in Uzumaki, there was no resistance from the seals, and with little effort, he carefully pulled it out of its sockets. Redirecting the chains, he gently put down the container on the cleanest of the tables. Naruto joined his ancestor and examined the eye closely. It appeared to be like a normal Byakugan, retaining its regular white color, only there was a pattern ingrained in the eye that stood out. A swastika pattern. And swastika is the Hindu mark that looks like a right-facing swastika. It is used for the Hokage clan's cursed seal in the manga. Look on my author profile page for an image of the Amatsu Byakugan. The eye pattern looks like the Hokage clan's Juinjutsu, Naruto noticed with surprise. These four arms, what do you suppose they mean? Hokage Urehi was known for his unique Jiken. It was said could destroy even diamonds with a single move. There is a possibility that his Jiken was so powerful due to his Amatsu Byakugan. Then Naruto remembered something else. Ajay-sama, I remember reading Hokage Urehi's Byakugan was so powerful it could look into the future. You don't suppose it's possible? It is possible, Hattori agreed before he could finish his thought. If there are such things as the Edo Tensei and Genjutsu that summon the Shinigami himself, clairvoyance is not out of the scope of possibility. The current clan head of the Uzumaki leveled his finger to the eye. There is a possibility these four arms signify the number of abilities that become possible with the Amatsu Byakugan. Naruto emulated his ancestor and stared at the Amatsu Byakugan. Have you ever tried to implant it in an Uzumaki, Ajay-sama? Hattori briskly shook his head. No, we deemed that far too risky. There was nothing to suggest even an Uzumaki could survive the implantation procedure. Uchiha and Hokage have had their eyes stolen by others before, but to our knowledge, there was never a case where a Mangekyou Sharingan had been stolen and successfully implanted, unsurprisingly given the power it bestowed upon the user. On that basis alone we decided to keep the eye here for safekeeping. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he turned to his ancestor. I have an idea, Ajay-sama, but you may not like it. However, if you agree to it, then I believe your plans for me will be sped up significantly. I am listening, child. Konoha no Sato. Sarutobi Hiruzen looked up from the report in one hand, whilst he rubbed his chin with the other. I see. He eyed the Chunin staffer in front of him for a moment and then nodded. Thank you for the good work. As the Chunin turned around and reached for the door, none other than Jiraiya stepped out of his shadow with a smirk, which soon faltered as Hiruzen's apathetic expression informed him he had been unsuccessfully hid his presence. Jiraiya. Sensei. The Sandaime folded his hands and rested his chin on them. How did it go? What, you're not going to offer me a drink first? The Sannin said only half-jokingly with an eye on the expensive liquor bottle on the stand by the Shodai's portrait. Judging from his sensei's expression that was not the case. It went well, he answered as he sauntered over to the liquor cabinet and helped himself anyway. Taji wasn't too sure, but we reached an understanding. They will arrive here shortly before this year's batch of Genin graduate. Did you notice anything unusual? Hiruzen questioned as he brows furrowed. Anything at all? Well, Jiraiya said turning to the Hokage, Taji was a little out of it. When I spoke to her, something felt off. She seemed to have some difficulty talking to me. 13 years in isolation from the rest of the world may have been tougher for her to deal with than we anticipated. The Gama Sennin nodded and proceeded to take a sip of his beverage. Damn, that's smooth, he appreciated as he helped himself some more. When I was there, I tested the kid myself. And? Hiruzen maintained his apathetic expression as he waited for an answer. He is well above anything you could expect from a genin. He's no Tsunade, but he packs a hell of a punch, and he's fast, very fast. For a moment there I thought I was fighting Minato, he'll pass the exam in his sleep. The Sandaime noticed Jiraiya's slight confusion. What is it? When I was there, I taught him how to summon toads. Hiruzen's look turned apprehensive. I figured it would make up for me being such a lousy godfather. I thought it would be something we could bond over. Please do cut to the chase, Jiraiya. I don't have all day. The sage shot his sensei a dark look but pressed on nonetheless. It took me months to figure out how to summon, it took Minato only a few days. It took Naruto 3 hours. The sage wasn't so sure whether he should have told his sensei that he had spent a lot of time talking and helping Naruto step by step and that he had the suspicion the young Uzumaki had simply humored him. That is quite unusual, Hiruzen agreed, now deep in thought. Do you suppose he's summoned before? Jiraiya could only shrug. Maybe. But what I want to know is how the kid got so powerful. Taji was no slouch in her day, but she couldn't have done it by herself. There's only one explanation I can come up with and it worries me, old man. Uzumaki Hattori. The Sandaime frowned, nodding as the information settled in. This is a problem. How the hell is he still alive? That's what I want to know, Hiruzen mused in a grave voice as he stroked his beard and reached for his pipe. He should have died by now. I'll see what I can dig up as to why he isn't, but I doubt I'll find anything, Jiraiya offered after downing the rest of his drink. When Naruto comes back, you'll want to place him under guard, sensei. He's closer to the old fart than I'm comfortable with. It doesn't feel right. I'll take your suggestion into consideration, Jiraiya. After a moment of silence broken only by the pipe being lit, the Sandaime nodded to his former disciple. Thank you for the good work. Don't mention it, Jiraiya replied as he phased into the ground and hid in the shadow of Hiruzen's desk, masking his exit. At that moment the door opened and Shimura Dansm walked in. Hiruzen. Dansm, the god of shinobi greeted with an even tone. Care for a pot of tea and a game of Shingai. Izushiagakur no Sato. I see, Hattori nodded as eyed his heir with a scrutinizing look. Very well. This gamble of yours could make or break our plans for the Hokage, but as the future head of this most ancient and noble clan, I will permit you to do as you see fit. Irihi's eye will be your responsibility. Naruto bowed his head respectfully and nodded. Thank you Ajay-sama. Do not fail me. I will try my hardest not to. Hattori gestured to the container. The heir retrieved a white and blue scroll with the Uzumaki emblem and sealed the container. He then held up a single-handed hand seal and called forth his chains. The spectral chains coiled around the scroll tightly and turned invisible. Only he could undo the seal on the scroll now. You embark in 3 days. Naruto stiffened. So soon? Jiraiya Kimfu said my age mates do no graduate for another 2 months. You will need time to rally support to our cause, the relic explained as he poked the youngster in the chest. We shall work the summons to our advantage. You will leave in 3 days. What of my mother? Tenjin will look after her health, she will be fit to travel when the time comes. Hattori reached for his wrist this time and held it tightly. She is not your mother. Do you understand? He is, Ajay-sama, Naruto agreed after only a moment of hesitation. If it were not for that woman he would be dead right now, Kurama glowered. Though he wasn't particularly fond of Taji personally, she meant a great deal to his host, and so he empathized. Once you find a way to cure her, you must sever your ties to this relic. He is poison. It's not that easy, Kurama. Naruto kept his eyes on Hattori as he replied. Then I will go around the islands one last time and secure the seals. I already marked your house so I can return to your side when you need me. Good, Hattori said simply. At night. Fourth Yuzu Island. The sun had long since gone down by the time Naruto arrived at the fourth surrounding island. In total, there were 4 smaller islands surrounding the main island. The 2 largest were used for housing and training facilities. The other 2 were used for stockpiling resources and agricultural usage. The seals had deteriorated around the time he turned 7 years old. Ever since, it was part of his chores to periodically go around and charge the seals that kept them hidden. It was actually tiring, even with his massive reserves. He stood in the center plaza of the 4th island and initiated the procedure of infusing his chakra in the seal's network. Looking around, he remembered his history lessons. The Uzumaki clan founded and created Uzumaki many generations ago. However, before that, the islands were known simply as the Whirlpool Lands. The Uzumaki ruled the Whirlpool Lands unchallenged. They were for essentially the royal house of Yuzu no Kuni. As the world changed, the need for shinobi to protect their interests sparked the birth of Uzumaki on the main island. And while the Uzumaki were powerful, they still needed help in securing the safety of their nation and its secrets, and thus the alliance of 3 came about. This alliance consisted out of 3 clans. The scholars of the Uzumaki clan, those one with nature of the Uragu clan and those that ruled the oceans of the Mizuki clan. 4. Under the laws of this alliance the Uzumaki resigned their claim to royalty and became equals to their partners. They were given jurisdiction over the main island upon which Uzumaki was built. The 2nd largest island was given to the Mizuki to rule over, and the 3rd largest, the island most bountiful in forestry and wildlife, was given to the Uragu clan to reside in. And though there were other clans within the Whirlpool Lands, these 3 were the greatest. The wisdom of the Uzumaki was unrivaled, the Uragu's strength on land unchallenged, and the power of the Mizuki in the water unmatched. For generations Uzumaki prospered, developing new technology and jutsu, finding riches in their trade and fame in their literature. They were hidden from the world, and even if their precise location could be found, one would have to be a fool to challenge the Mizuki to get to the island and the Yaguru in the forests to reach the residential areas. Unfortunately, the harmony within the alliance of 3 would not last forever. Though no longer royals, the Uzumaki were still revered as such, and they were influential, far more so than the Mizuki who resented them because of it. This resentment led to hatred, and before long a short-lived civil war erupted. The Yaguru sided with the Uzumaki, whilst the Mizuki rallied some of the minor clans, amongst which the budding Kagaya clan, the traitorous cousins of the Uzumaki. By the end of the war, the alliance of 3 was broken. The Mizuki escaped with their allies and settled in the land of water where they would one day establish the hidden mist village. Soon after they betrayed the Kagaya clan and had them annihilated. Those who surrendered were allowed to live in captivity, let out only when the Mizuki had enemies to kill. They lived pitiful lives, but they had betrayed their cousins, and thus there was neither pity nor salvation for them. Not even when the purges began and those with Kekkei Genkai were rounded up and eliminated. Even to this day Hattori hated the Mizuki with a passion. Should you ever come across members of that traitorous clan, it will be your duty to take their wretched lives. The relic had snarled. The Yaguru clan split up after the civil war. While the majority stayed part of the meld, small numbers defected in the dead of the night, never to be seen again. The Uzumaki clan were left to pick up the pieces. And though they recovered, without the Mizuki protecting their surrounding waters and shores, they were never truly as safe, no matter how much they improved their defensive seals. It was possible that if the alliance of 3 had never failed, the silent massacre of Uzumaki may not have occurred. Or so Hattori had suggested. But perhaps that was simply wishful thinking. Naruto had always thought. Their enemies were numerous. The combined forces of Iwa and Kumo alone would have been too much to withhold. And they were not alone. There had been others, minor villages such as Kusa, who were once on friendly terms with Uzumaki before their fall from grace, and the Hidden Waterfall, who had aimed to hurt Konoha through removing their allies of the Whirlpool Lands. Though never quite substantiated, there was a chance several Mizuki clan cells had been involved in the attack as well. So many enemies, Naruto mused under his breath. He felt a familiar chakra signature approach and turned to face the lumbering form of Uzumaki Gozu. The Taijutsu master was carrying massive stone pillars on his shoulders. He quite liked Gozu. The man had been rather helpful in rebuilding parts of the islands. Uzumaki was fully cleared from debris and even restored significantly months after he was resurrected. Ever since he had been going around the islands, making repairs here and there and clearing areas for remodeling. Naruto-sama. The heir nodded to the giant. Gozu, he greeted in kind. Helpful as always, aren't you? Gozu stamped over to the center of the plaza and laid down the pillars. Your training with me is over, there isn't much else I can do to be useful. Is death so boring you would rather labor for eternity than return to it? It wasn't a mocking question. Naruto was rather interested in finding out more about his ancestor, who had been almost as quiet as high about his life. Gozu gestured to his muscular frame. I've never been one to fit in with the clan, Naruto-sama. Aside from my red hair, I've never been like the others, never much of a thinker. I enjoyed the heat of battle more than anything, to crush skulls with my hands and to rip people apart. Naruto eyed the brutish Uzumaki silently, curiously. I had my uses, sure, but I was never that useful. The only thing I ever did right was killing. And the clan never saw me as good for nothing else. And you want to prove them wrong by rebuilding Uzushio by hand. Gozu rubbed the back of his head and smiled sheepishly. It was rather grotesque. I guess it's foolish, but I feel like I should to do something to contribute. I don't want to go down in history as an animal on a leash. And you never will. Naruto then decided to change the subject. I leave in 3 days. So I heard. The heir smiled wryly. Will you miss me? Gozu chuckled and went about his business without answering the question. Naruto eyed his muscular back for a moment and then dissolved into black and white, disappearing by the means of his yin-yang transmission. 3 days later, they were packed and ready to go. Taji had bounced back from her episode and appeared to be her usual self once more, happy to finally leave the island and looking forward to reuniting with her friends in Konoha. Whatever Tenjin did to her, it seems to have worked, Naruto thought as she hummed to herself while they headed to the shores, where Hattori would await them by their boat to see him off. If he had to be honest, he was anxious. Uzushiogakure was his home, it was all he knew, all he had ever known since he was an infant. To this day he had never interacted with others his own age. No, he did not have the privilege of normalcy. That was something Hattori had begrudged him. Taji eyed him with a curious, knowing smile. It'll be alright, Naruto-kun. You're going to love Konoha. Oh, it's been so long, I can't wait. He smiled thinly for her sake. At the same time, he carefully hid his clenched fist. How long would his surrogate know his mother last like this? She looked healthy and energetic now, but how long before her next fit? And what would he do then? The mind is a fragile thing, Kurama said in response to his worries. The woman Taji, he said, the name, knowing his host would comment otherwise. These episodes of her give the impression her mind is shifting to various times in her life. I believe it's a coping mechanism against the relic's manipulations. That explains why she mistook me for my father the other day. The heir nodded to himself. Then, do you suppose whatever it is Tenjin is doing is resetting her mind? I do not possess any significant knowledge on the mind, but I suppose that is likely what is happening. Picking up on his silence, Taji nudging him. Are you talking to your friend? She asked him in an attempt at conversation. She had been surprisingly accepting of Kurama once she came to learn of her son's involvement with the Bijk. Most likely it was because she was happy he made a friend, regardless of who or what it was. Yes, Naruto answered. I was just asking for advice. Well, whatever it is, it can't beat a mother's intuition, so spill it, she ordered as she hugged him while they walked. He had noticed she was more affectionate as of late, as though he was still a toddler. I haven't met anyone my age. So you decided to ask the entity that has killed untold numbers of people before your own mother? Naruto maintained a straight face, but felt a little defensive of his partner. It's not his fault people keep trying to control him, he said quietly when Taji released him. She hadn't heard as they approached the shores. Gozu was just finishing preparations for the boat whilst Hattori conversed with the other reanimated Uzumaki clansmen. Gee, I guess we're going back to sleep then, Tenjin scowled as they approached them. At least we had more time than Hiro, Gozu offered diplomatically. Tenjin snarled at the brutish-looking Uzumaki. Quiet, you misfit. I merely sighed at Tenjin and told the Gozu to ignore him. It is time we return to the plane of the dead. Our only request is that you call upon us once more when you need us. We shall call upon you once more when the time comes, Hattori assured as he turned to them. Your cooperation and contributions will not be forgotten. The relic turned to his heir and nodded. Naruto waited for Gozu to finish uploading the boat and join the others before going through a long string of hand seals. Edo Tensei. 4 coffins materialized and 3 fell open, while the 4th remained shut. I'd like a minute with him, Naruto asked the relic. There is something I must do. Hattori curled his nose in disgust. 1 minute, he growled. The 4th coffin fell open and out stepped Uzumaki Hiro, eyes opening slowly and blinking many times. This is unexpected. The others said nothing, deciding to stare intently at the heir instead. I wish to thank you for training me. Without you, I doubt I would be as formidable as I am today. Hiro said nothing for a long moment, staring at him long and hard. You have the greatest potential I have ever seen. All I did was point you in the right direction. You will not be forgotten. Their eyes locked meaningfully. The story of Uzumaki Hiro will be told truthfully and in its entirety. Hattori grumbled and stroked his beard. That is right, traitor. You will go down in history as a betrayer." Hiro smiled thinly. "Do as you please. Goodbye and thank you." Naruto then went through another string of hand seals and held the boar hand seal. Edo Tensei. Kai. They said nothing as they disappeared. There was no need for words, only actions could truly repay them for their contribution. And he would see to it that he did. "Now summon the guardians," Hattori instructed as the decomposed corpses used for the Edo Tensei dropped into the coffins and vanished along with them. "Ah. Why must you summon those damnable creatures?" Kurama snarled with disgust. "Even I am affected by their unnatural presence when you summon those abominations." "It is just a precaution," Naruto answered mildly as he moved a small distance away from the shore. "This may be a tight fit," he mused as he finished on the final seal, the tiger hand seal. He then slammed his hand on the ground and pushed a tremendous amount of chakra into his summoning jutsu. Guchius no Jutsu. Keijin Shugen no Rakushi. Summoning Jutsu. Enlightened 6 guardians. With great building-sized bursts of smoke the guardians appeared. The first to appear was the largest in size and the leader of the great lion-dog hybrids of legends, the Shisha. Its legs and paws were a shade of pearly white and its fur was the color of crimson fire. It had a white cloud for a mane and tail that flowed like fire and its eyes were amber and slit. "You called and we have come, Uzumaki Naruto-sama." The lion dog's voice was deep and wise. "It pleases me to see you." "And me as well, Bodai," Naruto returned. He then regarded the others behind the lion dog. "How have you all been?" Bodai spoke for his pack, such was his right as the alpha male. "We are in good health and eager to serve, Naruto-sama." The other Shisha bowed their gigantic heads in respect of the heir. Naruto remembered Hattori's words and allowed them the show of formality. They were Shisha, the guardian lions of the Uzumaki clan. Long ago, the Uzumaki, for a time, dabbled in the obscene and obscure art of alchemy and Fukinjutsu transmutation to enhance their Fukinjutsu-styled ways of combat. Initially they had aimed to find ways to create chimeras, humans with the DNA of certain animals that could potentially allow them to actually turn into them. There was a lot of merit to their research and not simply out of military interest. Of course, Naruto now realized how it would have aided their espionage. From that attempt, they tried to create new species through genetic manipulation, using mythical animals for their design. They based most of their work on lizard DNA, certain types of fish, mammals and bird. Then one day, long before the Alliance of Three was formed, the island was suddenly overrun with the Shisha, the noble lions of enlightenment that expressed their disgust at the actions of the Uzumaki clan. The Shisha were a noble species left by the Rikidam Sennin to be the guardians of nature. The aggressions against the sanctity of natural life committed by the Uzumaki had been grave enough to warrant the entire Shisha clan to appear before them. Of course, the Uzumaki clan had tried to reason with them, not wanting to go to war a mythical race that easily bypassed their seals. In the end a deal was struck that left both sides standing. The Uzumaki ceased their meddling with life and in return, the Shisha swore fealty in the form of a summoning contract. The 6 strongest were to be forever bound to the island, never to refuse protecting it when the time came, regardless of how their relationship with the Uzumaki could change. Bodai was the alpha of the pride. He and his mate and their 4 children were chosen to be bound to the island permanently. The rest of their kin remained in their land under the lead of the new alpha, Bodai's brother. Their relationship with the Uzumaki had changed very little, but they still answered to their calls. Though, that was before the silent massacre of Uzushiogakure, during which many of the enlightened lions fell whilst protecting Uzushio and the surrounding islands. Naruto would have words with Bodai's brother soon to rekindle the bond of the Uzumaki and enlightened lions. "Bodai, today I embark on my journey to Konoha. There may be a time where I need to call upon your kind. You have no yet affirmed the pact with my brother Guzei," Bodai said in thought. "Until you do, you can temporarily relinquish one of us from our station to come to your aid. I suggest you choose my eldest, Midem, as your familiar." Naruto eyed Midem carefully. He was second to his father in combat ability and fourth in wisdom. He shook his head as he came to a decision. "I will call upon you, Bodai, to assist me when it is necessary." "My lord, I urge you to reconsider." Naruto didn't have to. "I shall call upon you, Bodai. Such is my right, is it not?" The great lion bowed its head and his kin followed. "That it is, Uzumaki-sama." Naruto could feel Hattori's proud eyes on him. "Then it is decided. For now, the 6 of you will remain on this island. If your sons wish to mate, their partners may live with them, provided they contribute in your duties. We thank you for your generosity." Hattori hobbled alongside Naruto as they neared the boat. "Lay your mark here, boy. I shall await your return. Take care you are alone when you use your Onmam Tenzin." "I will, Ajay-sama." They set sail not long after that. The boat Gozu had built them was modest but sturdy, modeled after the ships made by Uzumaki shipwrights in cooperation with the Hazuki clan. Clones manned the deck whilst Naruto and Taji were in the kitchen, quietly enjoying their meal and deep in thought of what was to come when they embarked on the coast in Nami no Kuni. From there they would cross the border into Hai no Kuni and make their journey to Konohagakure no Sado. Naruto maintained a calm outward appearance, but on the inside he wasn't sure what to think. He was nervous and uncertain. Never before had he left Yuzu no Kuni. Never before had he stepped foot on soil that did not belong to his ancestors. "You'll be fine," Taji assured him in a motherly fashion, resting a hand on his arm. Naruto merely nodded. Taji was ignorant of Hattori's plans for him once they arrived in Konoha. How would he do? He had never interacted with people outside of Hattori, Taji and Jiraiya on occasion. He had read up on the subject of human interaction in books he found in the vault dedicated to psychology. But would it be enough? He doubted it. 13 years of isolation would undoubtedly leave its mark in everything he did. He could only hope he would succeed. Ch4. Nami no Kuni. Nami no Kuni Harbor. The boat rocked gently over passive waters as it came to a slow stop by the harbor of Nami no Kuni. It was cold and early in the day, no later than 5 in the morning. A thick fog persisted, making it difficult to steer the ship even with passive wind manipulation to clear the path. Naruto stood on deck as his clones prepared the ship for docking. As they did so, the heir remembered his history lessons regarding to Nami no Kuni. Originally the minuscule island had been part of Hai no Kuni many years ago. Though small and with few natural resources, the island was ideal for a military base to dock naval ships and house personnel on leave and training. This was before the time of shinobi villages where so numerous countries could survive using them as their only military force. Nami no Kuni was given independence following a war between Hai no Kuni and Mizu no Kuni over the oceans. The leader of the small island was a wise man that had helped the two countries settle for peace through organizing a mutually beneficial treaty that filled the coffers of both countries. When asked what he wanted for a reward, all the wise man wished for was independence for his village, and thus Nami no Kuni was born. Small as though it may be, its history was not forgotten. The ship docked successfully after a few minutes. Most of his clones dispelled, leaving only a few to man the ship. Taji joined him outside not much later dressed in a warm cloak, rubbing her gloved hands together. Finally. The fog was a nuisance. Naruto glanced at her and then proceeded to wait for the landing board to be settled before walking off to meet with the harbor master who was already hobbling his way. The harbor master was a frail old man with a hunched back, a terribly trimmed beard and a walking stick that had seen better days. My, where did you get this beauty?" he croaked, gesturing to the uzumaki emblem on the side of the boat. "I haven't seen one of those in a long time. It sure is a boat." "Thank you." Naruto pulled off one of his gloves and shook the harbor master's hand. For the old man to recognize the uzumaki's emblem, he must have been at least 80 or 90 years old. Naruto knew it would be impolite to ask, deciding instead to go with his cover story. It was rather expensive. The harbor master laughed croakily. "I would think so, that's an antique. It doesn't look so old though, must have been one hell of a renovation job." The old man gave him a suspicious look. "Where'd you get it?" "My grandfather is a collector." Naruto looked around the harbor to hide his apprehension. This was the first time he had interacted with a stranger. A part of him wished it could have been with someone a bit easier on the eyes and less suspicious of him. Well, the old man looked to the weathered clipboard in his hands. "We aren't expecting any ships today, or any time soon for that matter. It doesn't look like you came here for repairs or supplies, so, why are you here if you don't mind me asking?" Naruto opened his mouth and closed it immediately, he cursed his inexperience. Fortunately Taji stepped in with a bright smile. "My son loves history, so we came to see the sights. We have supplies to sell at other ports, but we're happy to unload some here." In reality they only had a few crates of supplies in the ship, certainly not in the kind of quantity as would be expected of a merchant ship. The harbor master's eyes lit up. "Great. We're rather short in pretty much everything at the moment in this town. I'm sure Tanzuna will figure something out with you." "I assume Tazuna-san is the village leader?" Naruto asked. "He sure is. He's in charge of the bridge too," the old master said proudly. "You know, the bridge that they're building to connect us to Hai no Kuni. I'm sure you've heard of it." "Afraid not, we're from Cha no Kuni and don't often sail these ways," Taji responded aloofly as the old man led them to his tiny booth. "How much will the docking fees cost us?" "There are no docking fees since hardly any ships come our way," the harbor master informed. "Thanks to that bastard Gato." Naruto was about to ask when Taji shook her head as she hooked her elbow under his arm. "Gato from Gato Industries. I heard from a friend he's been making it difficult for you to compete in commerce." Naruto didn't have to guess twice to figure out whom she meant by her friend, of course Jiraiya would have mentioned it to her. "Compete? Lady, we're struggling to put food in our mouths, let alone ship it off elsewhere." Naruto frowned. "Why has Hai no Kuni not taken any steps to aid you? I thought you were on friendly terms." "Well, according to Tazuna, they're not going to help us if we stay independent. See, the clause in the treaty that gave us independence made it so that only we could give up our sovereignty willingly. If Hai no Kuni were to make us join them, they could risk war or some political fallout with Mizu no Kuni and its allies, so they're just waiting for us to buckle, but we won't. The elderly man shook his head several times. Not a chance. Word has it Gatom's got buddies in the Hai no Kuni government to make sure nobody steps in, but Tazuna has been looking into hiring some shinobi to clear out that bastard. Though scraping together the money is going to be tough since Gatom's got one of Kiri's 7 shinobi swordsmen as one of his lapdogs. Zabuza ain't a pushover, and the deadlier the enemy the bigger the risk, and the bigger the risk the more pricey it's going to be. We are sorry to hear of your plight, Taji offered sympathetically as they finished signing in and went about their business. Just be careful out there. I'm sorry to say you've got to watch out for the locals as much as for Gatom's thugs these days. They're good folk deep down, but desperation and hunger can make any man go crazy. We'll keep that in mind, Taji assured as they left the shabby wooden docks and headed towards the village market. They quickly found out the village had seen better days. The streets were dirty and grimy, the stalls in the markets were empty, drunks and the homeless and the poor sat on the ground, hungry and begging for their kindness in the form of food or money. The only ones standing were scantily clad women and intimidating-looking men with swords and scared villagers that scurried past them without daring to make eye contact. At some point they saw a prostitute and a man fornicating in an alley, taking little to no care to be discreet about their business. Taji quickly pulled her son along as she had done with the beggars. Don't look. He wasn't trying to, having only caught a glimpse. Having studied the subject for his medical ninjutsu, he wasn't at all unfamiliar with female anatomy. It didn't stop him from feeling rather uncomfortable though. The loud commotion prompted them to look over their shoulders to find the man that had been with a woman trying to run out on her without paying, only to be caught by the nearby Remnin, who then proceeded to brutally attack him, punching and kicking the man as he fell down. They stood and observed for a moment too long as one of the thugs eyed them predatorily, sauntering over with his sword resting on his shoulder. What do we have here? We were just leaving. Taji turned to leave when he grabbed her by her elbow. The thug leered at Taji, licking his lips. You're a good-looking woman. How about you come with us and we'll let the brat proceed unmolested? Naruto's eyes narrowed dangerously as he gently freed himself from his guardian and regarded the Remnin with a vacant look in his eyes. Let go of my mother. Eh? The thug turned over his shoulder to his companions that were just about done beating their victim to a bloody pulp and taking his money. Look at this kid. The woman would do good here, don't you think? Grab his cloak and let him walk. She's coming with us though. They laughed loudly as they surrounded them. That is a nice-looking cloak, one of them noted. Naruto. Too late, Naruto decided as he grabbed the man by his wrist and snapped it like a dry twig, forcing him to let go. Even after over a decade of inactivity, they were not even remotely a threat to his mother, but that mattered nothing to him. You should have let us walk. Ah! The thug cried as he fell to a knee, nursing his wound. The fuck are you standing around for? Get him. They had taken perhaps only one step in his direction, not even that most likely, when they were flung back violently by an intangible force, sending them crashing into buildings and stalls with such force, they weren't likely to get back on their feet anytime soon. Naruto, that was reckless, Taji chided with a frown, though she let up and brushed his cheek. But thank you. Fortunately it was rather early in the morning and cold, and thus not many people were around to see what had just transpired, allowing them to discreetly make their way for the most northern part of Nami no Kuni, where they would make arrangements for a ferry to the coast of Hai no Kuni. Their ship would remain in the harbor, under security and Jinjutsu seals which had activated shortly after they distanced themselves over 100 feet. The seals made their ship invisible to the naked eye to repel unwanted visitors. They would not have to return to their ship for a while, and if someone somehow got through their seals, there was nothing of true value on board, as Naruto had all their valuables sealed in a scroll on his person. The child came running up to them as they went about their business. He was no older than 6, covered in hard and dirty and rags, and without any shoes or sandals to cover his soles. Can you please spare some food? My family is starving. The shinobi and Taji pushed for her to leave. The mother inside of her couldn't help but conflict with that side. With a grimace she was about to refuse the child when Naruto reached inside his cloak and discreetly stuffed a wad of rim bills, nearly 1,000, in the child's hands. Don't tell anyone where you got this from. The boy looked like he was about to cry. Thank you. Thank you so much. I promise I won't tell anyone. Thanks again. He then quickly ran off, leaving Taji to look at her son with a soft expression. He picked up on it. Was I foolish to give him the money? No. Ajay-sama would have disapproved, he said quietly. Taji firmly shook her head. Kushina would have done the same thing. I'm proud of having raised such a kind son in her stead. Naruto nodded once. Thank you. At that moment a man dressed in simple clothes with a straw hat and an open bottle of beer came walking their way. You must be the newcomers the old man by the docks mentioned. Neither Taji nor Naruto responded, opting to hear the man out first. Old man Tenmaru said your ship suddenly disappeared, so I'm guessing you're ninja. And from the looks of it, you can carry yourselves. Or at least you can, young man. Taji's unassuming expression turned serious in an instant. What do you want? We were just passing by. The name's Tazuna, the man introduced himself with a grin and a tip of his straw hat. And I've got an offer for you. Anahagakure no Sato. Saratobi Hiruzen anticipated the knocking at his door. Come in. Okage-sama, you called for me? You mean Oruka asked as he entered. He closed the door behind him and remained at a respectful distance. Hiruzen nodded as he looked over the files on his desk. Yes, I did, Iruka-kun. The Hokage gestured for the Chunin to take a seat and waited for him to be seated. I have called you here to inform you of a new student that will be joining your class within a few days from now. Perplexed, the academy teacher immediately objected. Hokage-sama, my class is about to graduate. Do you really think it is wise to add this student to my roster so close to the exams? The Sandaime smiled reassuringly as he turned a sheet of paper in front of him for the Chunin to see. Your new student will be Uzumaki Naruto. He will be joining your class to graduate with his age mates this academic year. Worry not, Iruka. His skills have been assessed. He should have no issues graduating this year. As you wish, Hokage-sama. It was clear that Chunin still had his doubts, but the Sandaime made it perfectly clear he had no weight in the matter. Is there anything else, Hokage-sama? Hiruzen turned the file and returned to his paperwork. That will be all, Iruka-kun. Nami no Kuni. About half an hour after encountering the village leader, Naruto and Taji found themselves in Tazuna's house, seated at the table in the kitchen across from the bridge builder and his son-in-law, Kaiza. The bridge builder wasted no time and cut to chase soon after. Naruto had to admire his straightforwardness, but his mother was less appreciative. Eliminate Gato. Taji repeated what had just been asked of them. Yeah, why not? Tazuna let out a boisterous laugh as he pat his gut much to Kaiza's chagrin. You can do it, can't you? Naruto answered before his mother could. I have never had any reason to doubt my ability. In all likelihood dismantling Gato's operations in your country should not be a challenge. The question here is not if I could do it, but why I would want to do such a thing for strangers. I can tell a good man when I see one, and you kid, there's something about you that makes me think you've had it rough, but I can tell you'll help us out. The bridge builder didn't divulge where he got this insight from, much to Naruto's disappointment. It's not my son or I's duty to help you, Tazuna-san. Taji held the man's gaze calmly. We were merely passing by. What reason do we have to stay here and do your dirty work for you? It's not dirty work if it helps out a lot of good people in a tough spot, lady. Naruto didn't quite know what to make of Tazuna, but he was intrigued by the man's candid disposition. He was not all like Hattori. I'm only asking you to take out Gato. You don't necessarily have to deal with his lapdog's abuser. It should be easy for a shinobi, right? Aiza smiled uncomfortably. Tazuna, we'll be leaving now, Taji decided as she stood up out of her chair just as Tsunami came walking in with a tray of food. It wasn't much, some rice, fish and a half-empty bottle of sake, but it was clear they were willing to share what little they had. Aren't you going to stay for dinner? She asked. Taji bowed her head respectfully. No thank you, we have tight schedule to keep. Naruto eyed the young boy Inari cling to his mother's apron. He felt sympathetic. We could stay for a meal and hear Tazuna-san out, Kachin. His surrogate looked at him for a moment and then slowly nodded once she caught the look in his eyes. Alright, but we have to get going soon after. We still have the whole day ahead of us and we need to make some headway by nightfall. She had already made her decision from the looks of it. Understood. As Taji sat down again they dug in. They ate in silence for the most part, though Tazuna continued to talk to them about the village's situation and the stranglehold Gato had on it. We can't even use our boats to fish without paying his thugs 2/3 of what we catch as tax, and it's not even the right season for fishing, so whatever we can get is measly to begin with. We can't import any food or medicine either, not that we'd have the money for it. The only way he'll let us do it is we sign off ownership of the bridge to Gato Industries, but I'd die before I'd agree to that. Naruto finished picking at his fish and pushed back his plate. I certainly sympathize with your village's predicament, Tazuna-san. He spoke in a calm, dignified manner as had been taught to him. But exactly what is it you would have me do? I told you, didn't I? I want you to get rid of Gato. Tazuna's beer bottle slammed hard on the wooden table. That man is a gutless weasel, a real piece of work. He's bleeding this country dry, and for what? Just for his stinking profits and monopolies. He took another large gulp of his drink and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. The alcohol was starting to take. He couldn't care less about the people that have died because of him. Men like him don't deserve mercy. What they deserve is a slit throat and an unmarked grave. Aiza bowed his head pleadingly. Please, Uzumaki-san, help this country rid itself of Gato. After a long, tense moment of silence, Naruto finally nodded. Very well. I shall deal with Gato and purge him and his men from this island. You will? Tsunami exclaimed happily. Aiza stood up and hugged his wife and son. Thank you, Naruto. Taji shook her head firmly. We don't have the time. Her son held up a hand. "Hear me out, Kachin." His voice was firm and assertive. "I will do this under one condition, Tazuna-san." The older man gave him a suspicious look. "And what's that?" Naruto looked him in the eye as he named his once condition with utmost confidence. "The people of Nami no Kuni will relinquish their independence and unite with Yuzu no Kuni effective immediately after I eliminate Gato." Tazuna burst out laughing, loudly and uncontrollably. Naruto wasn't so sure what was so amusing but waited for the man to settle down nonetheless. "Wait, you're serious, aren't you, kid?" Tazuna caught on eventually. "But Yuzu no Kuni doesn't exist anymore. So you've heard of it," he surmised coolly, not at all amused by the bridge builder's response. Tazuna looked at him as though he were a fool. "Heard of it? Of course I have. The wise man that made his country, he was from Yuzu no Kuni. His name has been forgotten, but yeah, I've heard of Yuzu no Kuni. It was destroyed a long time ago." "Interesting," Naruto thought with a nod. "So the man that ensured this country's independence was from Yuzu no Kuni. Perhaps he was sent here to weaken Hai no Kuni's hold on this country. Interesting theory, Kurama." Naruto held Tazuna's gaze. "Yuzu no Kuni was never destroyed. It was simply weakened. And now it is back under my rule and I am serious about my offer, Tazuna-san. You can join me and benefit from my protection or you can continue to struggle to make ends meet under the likes of Gato." "Is he for real?" Tazuna looked at Taji. She sighed. "I'm afraid so." Naruto smiled thinly. "You said you could tell a good man when you see one. You also said that I fit that description. So, Tazuna-san, I ask you, what do you stand to lose from joining me in rebuilding the land of my forefathers?" "We'd have more to gain if we relinquished our independence and joined Hai no Kuni," the older man countered. "Yes, you most certainly would," Naruto admitted easily. "But in exchange you would revert to what this country once was, a military base." Hazun scratched his beard in thought. "I tell you what, kid. You get rid of Gato and I'll convince the people to at least vote on it as part of some referendum." Judging from Tazuna's laughter and sniggering, Naruto could tell the bridge builder was treating his proposal as some joke. Naruto stood up out of his seat. "Very well then." With one look he silenced Taji before she could speak up. As much as he loved her, when it came to clan business there was little she could do to sway him. "Kaiza-san, I will rely on you to guide me and be my witness." "Okay," the fisherman agreed after a nod from Tazuna. He kissed his wife and ruffled his son's hair before he grabbed his coat. Naruto turned to his mother. "Kachin, I will be back shortly. Do not worry, I will be back within the hour." They left shortly after. Taji glared daggers at Tazuna for a while but refrained from voicing her displeasure. "Some kid you've got there," he said. She crossed her arms over her chest. "You have no idea. Adam Stronghold." Adam was a man of few principles. He never borrowed money if he couldn't pay the interest, never made an offer more than twice, and never took no for an answer. He was man that had made it from the slums to the top. He worked hard to get there, kept eyes and ears open, and never took risks he couldn't afford, or any for that matter if he could help it. By the age of 52 he had built himself an empire. Gatom Industries was worth millions of rim, he was influential, and his name now had weight to it. More than money, Gatom valued power and unlike most he understood the difference. He had always known the difference. Money bought him a beautiful multi-million rim mansion in an exotic place that would one day, inevitably so, wither and decay into nothingness. Power bought him influence, the ability to change things. If used properly, one's power could be everlasting. Amongst his few principles, Gatom had one in particular that had proven most useful, not long after he became the man he was now, a man of wealth. When possible, he would always do a favor for someone that could return it generously. That was why he was here, in Nami no Kuni, a pitifully small island that had been granted sovereignty many years ago. The daemon of Hai no Kuni himself had approached Gatom, of course not personally, but through others in his court, with the promise of nobility if all went well and Hai no Kuni could acquisition Nami no Kuni for their own purposes. Nobility. Gatom once despised the notion of it when he was a youngster and had nothing but the clothes on his back and the fire in his belly for more. Now he was older, richer and wiser. The older he grew the more he came to understand the importance of legacy. Where would his fortune go once he passed? What would all the wealth he amassed over the years through cutthroat business strategies and backroom deals do for him? Nothing. The realization left him feeling hollow. The answer to his woes was nobility. He understood this now better than ever before. He would die, but his eldest would be the successor to the house of Gatom. From now until the end of time he would be remembered, his name would be remembered. His mark in history would not be easily forgotten. Within weeks of being propositioned by the daemon, he had left his company to be run by his eldest and purchased the service of several dozen skilled ronin, most of whom ex-servicemen in various armies, highly trained and experienced, but also very pricey. And as of a few days ago he now had 4 shinobi at his disposal, amongst whom none other than Mamachi's Abusa, the Kurigakure no Kijin, a former member of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the Mist's first generation. Oh, indeed, Zabuza was a force to be reckoned with, a truly fear-inspiring individual far too skilled for the job he was hired to do, but as all reasonable rogue ninja, had accepted the considerable retainer he was being paid for it. Adam leant back in his comfortable recliner by the fire and liquor cabinet in his base of operations located in the woods. He rubbed his hands together greedily as he reveled at the thought of the day he was made a noble. Soon. Adam-sama. The magnate looked away from the wire with a dark look in his eye for the gopher that had disturbed him. What is it? His eyes narrowed further upon finding his messenger to be pale in the face. Gato regretted pulling him away from his job as junior secretary at his company. Now. We have a problem outside, the young man stammered. There is a person here to see you and he's being insistent. Have some of the Ronin get rid of him, no, kill him to send the locals a message. The assistant swallowed thickly. Some of the Ronin tried that, Gato-sama, and? They're dead. Adam jumped out of his seat. What? He burst out so loud his underling jumped. Explain. I'm afraid I can't, sir. Moments earlier, there's Gatom's stronghold. Kaiza pointed in the direction of large spire-shaped structure, suspended amongst the great trees in the forest, from which several bridges connected to smaller structures. 1. There were close to 50 or so Ronin on the ground and more on the bridges above and in the smaller lookout posts. I can count 83. That should do as a warm-up for the two inside the building. I would estimate both to be of Jumnin level, Kurama commented. Do you feel it too? Naruto knew what his partner meant. Yes, I sense it too. The contrast in malice is rather odd. It's as though the smaller chakra signature has never killed. Be on your guard. Aiza-san. Naruto turned to the fisherman as he retrieved a single kunai. It was long and jagged, clearly of unique design not unlike his father's creation. It is best you leave for now. Should you come across any trouble, throw this kunai in front of you and I will come to your aid immediately. Confused and unsure what the youth before him meant, Kaiza nervously reached out and accepted the kunai. Sure. Under no circumstances are you to attempt to do battle of any sort, Kaiza-san. I intend to return you to your family unharmed and with good news. Do we have an understanding? The older man nodded again, now smiling. You're really going to do it, aren't you? Naruto gave no answer as he began to advance towards the Ronin settlement. Kaiza turned and ran as fast and as far as his legs could take him. Adam's thug began to turn his way as he approached them confidently. I am here to see Gato. A single arrow struck the ground mere inches before him. That's far enough. One of the Ronin in charge shouted as he called his men. State your business. The Uzumaki heir calmly looked around and found the archer that had fired the arrow sneering at him. With a mere motion of his hand he moved the arrow from the ground and turned it. With another flick he fired it at such an amazing the speed he doubted the archer had even taken note of the sizable hole in throat when he died. So this is what killing a man feels like, he thought as his enemies roared and began to charge towards him. Your first kill isn't always as special as it is made out to be. Most of the Ronin never got within striking distance of him. They fell dead to the ground before they had the opportunity to do him harm, cut down by the wind itself. Naruto merely strode past them as they were struck down. Arrows meant to take him out simply did not fly and bombs thrown his way were blown far off course. I must take note not to cause too much collateral damage. This place would do well as a base of operations, he mused to himself. By now Gatom's hired thugs had realized long-range attacks were futile and began to swing down from the bridges. He waited calmly for them to circle around him and try to unsheathe their swords, only to notice they could not do so. Sometimes I think you are truly loved by the wind. I have lived for a long time, but I do not believe there exists a shinobi with a stronger affinity for it than you. The heir smiled a little. Kurama's compliments grew more rare over time as he grew up. Thank you, Kurama. What is this? One managed to say coherently through the tumultuous raging and shouting. Whomever he was foolish to think he could lay a hand on their opponent. He swung his fists like a madman possessed with fury, a single-minded determination fueled by his fear and humiliation, and focused it all on landing a blow on the Uzumaki before him, however nothing came of it. Striking the blonde was like attempting to strike a leaf in the wind. He missed and continued to miss for as long as he was allowed to. After a moment, Naruto gathered wind in his clenched fist and released it in a palm strike. It had only taken him a second, but the powerful blast of wind was enough to throw off all of his attackers and send the one unlucky foolish Ronin that caught it directly to be thrown across with such gravity. He struck the base of the greatest tree, upholding the structure with such force his back and all his other bones shattered upon impact. He died a moment later, permitted one last death rattle before the Reaper took him. How? All of the remaining Ronin had their will to fight simultaneously crushed. Their battle was over and their reactions varied. The few that had a fraction of their pride left silently resigned themselves to their deaths, while those that did not either fell to their knees in absolute terror or began to slowly back away. Will you kill them? Naruto shook his head. I still have use for them, he replied as he walked past them. Leave this place. Nami no Kuni is under the protection of Uzumaki Naruto, the clan head of the Uzumaki clan and sole ruler of Uzu no Kuni. Leave now and never return, only death awaits you and all others with malice in their hearts. Some of the Ronin had already begun to run as though the devil himself was behind them. Repeat what I have said to all those you encounter. Uzumaki Naruto will show no mercy to his enemies. A wise decision, Kurama said as he realized what his host had meant. This way not only will you secure a reputation for yourself, Nami no Kuni will be safe from Ronin at least. Clap. 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 An admirable performance, Gato said from the structure's balcony. Uzumaki Naruto was it? Allow me to introduce myself. I know who you are, Gato, Naruto cut the man off. I will extend to you one opportunity to quietly dismantle your operations and leave Nami no Kuni in peace. Gato's face contorted with anger for a moment, but he soon regained his composure. Those are big words from a small child, he returned mockingly. Do not misunderstand, boy. You have defeated mere men, I still have my demons to call upon. Go, Oni Kimdai. From the shadows, two individuals appeared at his left and right. They had shoulder-length wild dark brown hair and eyes, they wore camouflage suits with bandages around their waists, dark-colored knee-length sandals and ragged black capes. They wore breathing apparatuses that covered the lower halves of their faces, on their foreheads, they wore scratched kurigakure headbands, to which the one on his left had a single horn attached to as opposed to the two horns of the other. Most notably they carried large clawed gauntlets that reeked of poison with chains coming from the end. Interesting. I'd like to see how I fare against shinobi, Naruto thought as he glanced at them and then looked at Gato expectantly. His utter lack of fear set the short-statured businessman off. Attack, Mzu, Maizu. Tear him to shreds. The demon brothers charged at him from both sides in perfect synchronization. Though their speed may have been impressive to the untrained, they were moving at the pace of slugs for Naruto. By the time they had realized they needlessly attached their chains and pulled, he had moved past them and created two cage Bunshin clones that held kunai to their necks. Why are you not killing them? Do you want them to spread word of you to other shinobi? Not quite, Kurama. He deliberately chose not to elaborate any further. His partner would know his reason soon enough. You're beaten. Move and you die. The Oni Kimdai sensed no idle threat and hung their heads in defeat as he continued to advance. He casually flicked a kunai coated in wind chakra into a nearby tree. The leaves rustled and a masked individual darted from it. This new figure had long black hair, a slender frame and wore platoon sandals and the standard kurigakure pinstriped uniform under a green haori with white trimmings and a brown sash. The most notable thing was the kurigakure hunter nin mask that covered her face. 2. The censor type. The hunter nin exclaimed in a feminine voice. He ignored the question and looked back to Gato. If you truly wish to stop me, I suggest you order your trump card to come out. A hail of senbon flew his way courtesy of the masked shinobi, but were stopped mid-air and returned to their owner at twice the speed. Interestingly enough, the masked shinobi erected an ice barrier to shield herself. Hampton. He voiced his surprise. A Yuki clan member, that is interesting. He turned and began to approach the masked shinobi. His nose twitched as he took note of the pleasant smells he discerned from her scent, amongst which some medical herbs that also grew on Uzu no Kuni. I would very much like to avoid killing you. We are like relatives in a way. Relatives? It was her turn to sound surprised. Impossible, I am the last of my clan. She threw another hail of senbon skillfully aimed to incapacitate him. He blew them off course with a dismissive wave and called forth 3 of chains of enlightenment. The demon brothers were quickly taken care of, but seconds before the final chain reached the masked Kunoichi, another shinobi wielding a large sword appeared and batted it way. Zabuza-san. Zabuza was a man of noteworthy height and lean yet muscular build with pale skin, short spiky black hair and brown eyes, accentuated by unusually short eyebrows. He was shirtless, wearing only a belt for his sword, baggy pants and wrist warmers extending to his elbows with matching leg warmers. He wore bandages around the lower half of his face like a mask and a scratched kurigakure forehead protector sideways on his head. Haku, you are no match for him. This keeps getting more interesting, Naruto commented as he retracted the chain meant for Haku. Go free Mzu and Maizu, Zabuza instructed Haku as he kept his eyes on their blonde opponent. Haku moved without objection as the loyal tool she was. She's quick, Naruto noted as she traversed the distance between herself and the Oni Kimdai in a mere moment. If you value your life, do not touch the chains. Haku hesitated and looked at Zabuza. I am of the Uzumaki clan. Our chains of enlightenment will kill all those who touch them without permission, he explained with a condescending smile. The swordsman shook his head negatively, thus she refrained from touching the chakra chains. You are an interesting bunch. Zabuza wasted no time and charged at him with surprising speed, his large sword aimed to split him in half like a block of wood. Much to the former Kirijin's surprise, Naruto caught his blade with one hand and gripped it tightly, showing no signs of budging when he pulled with all this might. What the? In response to the attack, Naruto slowly raised his hand to Zabuza's chest. Fton. Repshim. Driven by his killer instinct and experience, Zabuza relented his grip and dashed away by means of a quick body flicker, just in time to avoid the certain death in the form of a wind cannon blast that continued into a powerful stream several meters wide that tore away at the landscape. That's a C-rank jutsu. How is it so powerful? The swordsman exclaimed mentally as he equipped himself with a particularly long kunai instead. Gee. I see you are rather surprised, Zabuza-san. If there was one thing Naruto could not fault Hattori for, it was teaching him the proper decorum expected of skilled shinobi. Allow me to make this perfectly clear to you. You have no chance of beating me. Aku appeared by Zabuza's side wielding another handful of senbon. What do we do, Zabuza-san? Arms hanging low and loose out of habit, her master was still marveling at the power of their opponent. In that one encounter, which had lasted no longer than a moment, he had come to a daunting realization. There's no mistaking it, Haku, he finally said. This kid is cage level. Quite right, Naruto confirmed. He was not being conceited. The simple truth of the matter, as he had come to realize mere moments after seeing them, was that the gap between their powers were simply insurmountable. This sword is quite unusual for a shinobi. It was forged rather masterfully, he noted as he turned Kubikurubchim over to its master. The swordsman caught it effortlessly by its handle and swung it across his back, all the while continuing to glare at the uzumaki. Zabuza. Gato screamed from the balcony. What are you saying? I've paid you good money to do my bidding. I order you to kill this fool. I'll kill and steal for you, Gato, but I fall on my blade for no one, Zabuza responded as beads of sweat ran down the side of his face. Such presence. It's like I'm facing Nagura. Naruto smiled once more and nodded at the pair before turning to the structure. He had taken a few steps when he suddenly felt an immense killing intent. Suiton. Surikten no Jutsu. Heimten. Hisatsu Heimzum no Jutsu. The dragon of water erupted from a nearby stream and barreled its way towards Naruto, accompanied by long and thick spears of ice. The shockwave that followed rocked the forests, causing a large flock of birds to take to the sky. As the dust settled, Zabuza smirked under his bandage mask. As I thought. The kid was powerful but far too inexperienced. He was too kind, Haku noted with the faintest hint of sympathy in her voice, as they waited for the dust to settle. Adam was beside himself with joy as they found the boy to be lying face down in a puddle of blood, several spikes of ice protruding from his body. Yes. Yes. This is what I wanted to see. Zabuza looked at the body without a hint of pity or remorse as he approached it. Prepare to conduct an autopsy, Haku. As he knelt by the body, he turned the body over to look upon the boy's face. His eyes were dull and lifeless, his expression permanently stretched in shock. Such a waste. Indeed, the corpse then replied. A hand erupted from the ground as the corpse disappeared in a wisp of colors, gripping Zabuza by the neck. You are quite right, I am inexperienced, Naruto said as he applied pressure to specific points of the swordsman's neck to keep him on his knees. But I am no fool. That was no normal genjutsu, Zabuza gurgled with bulging eyes as his face turned a reddish color from asphyxiation. Inten allows even someone as challenged in the field of genjutsu as I to create compelling illusions, Naruto explained. Gone was his smile, now replaced by a cold stare that bore into the former Kirinin's eyes. I showed you kindness when I should not have. As soon as I turned my back you tried to repay me with a brutal underhanded death. Zabuza could hardly breathe, let alone raise his arms to defend himself. You call yourself a shinobi? He eventually managed. Perhaps I am too naive, Naruto admitted with a mindful eye on Haku, who had known better than to interfere. I thank you for teaching me a valuable lesson, Zabuza-san. No. Haku screamed as he applied more pressure to snap his neck. She rushed forward with no concern for her own life, not stopping even when he turned the discarded weapons on the ground on her. The blades cut at her, tearing away at her clothes and drawing blood, and arrows dug into her back and limbs, however she showed no signs of slowing down and continued to charge at him. His surprise cost him his kill as he was forced to release Zabuza and jump back to a safe distance. You question whether I am a true shinobi, yet your protege is so foolish she would choose certain death to save you. I am Zabuza's tool, Haku breathed heavily as she stood before her master. I am his to command. I will gladly lay down my life for his. Her cracked mask fell apart and revealed a pretty face with a pained expression and blood-stained lips. Naruto's eyes narrowed at hearing her say those words, or rather the conviction she said them with. A tool, you say? An anger he had not realized he possessed burned in his chest. Naruto, what do you mean when you say you are a tool? The Jinchuriki demanded. I belong to Zabuza-san. My mind, body and soul are all his to use as he pleases, Haku answered simply. I am his to do with as he will. Are you not made of human flesh? He asked her. Do you not have a soul of your own? Do you possess no mind of your own? Unknowingly his voice began to rise in volume. Do you not possess a will of your own? Surprised and not expecting the questions and the apparent anger behind them, Haku didn't know to respond. What does it matter to you? This girl is not unlike you, Kurama spoke up again. Do not project your anger on her. Regain your composure. This is beneath you. He blinked several times as the Bijk's comments broke his anger. Forgive me, he said aloud to both the Bijk and the Kunoichi before him. It is not my business to question your beliefs. I am simply confused. She continued to stare him apprehensively as blood flowed out of her wounds freely. Her already pale skin had turned white as a result. You said you had use for them, what good will she be to you dead? Naruto sighed as he raised his hand, sent another chain at Haku. Much to both of their surprise, Zabuza pushed Haku aside in order to protect her. Zabuza-san. Though his throat had been crushed, he strained himself to utter one coherent albeit raspy sentence. Run, Haku. Go now. Naruto blinked several times. It appears your master cares more about you than you think, Haku-san. Another chain sprung forth and wrapped around the Kunoichi. Do not worry. It was not my intention to kill either of you. Green chakra ran down the chains and enveloped the two. Why are you doing this? Zabuza asked after his windpipe was healed and his energy restored. We are your enemy. Atma is my enemy, he corrected simply. Unlike the Remnin, I have not seen you cause the people of Nami no Kuni harm, and thus I will not kill you. You're no shinobi. Zabuza spat at him. There was only so much a mercy a shinobi could take before even they would be offended by it. Of course I am, he replied as his expression turned serious and cold once more. I am also the leader of a yet-to-be fully revived country. My mercy does not come without a price. Zabuza looked to his apprentice, she had succumbed to unconsciousness, suspended in the air by a chakra chain. Her wounds had closed and color returned to her face. What do you want in return? Naruto released the chakra chain holding Zabuza and approached him slowly as he remained on one knee. This was a critical moment, he would have to make an impression that would last forever. He closed his eyes for a moment and took a deep breath. And then his chakra levels exploded to phenomenal, ungodly levels. The air around him became thick as his energy exuded suffocating pressure. The ground beneath him and the trees nearby began to crack, and as the earth shook the leaves out of them. Zabuza's eyes went wide, his pupils shrunk under his gaze as Naruto's own blue orbs turned blood red and slit. The blue shroud of chakra around him turned red, and a fox out of the bubble-like chakra appeared at his right shoulder with glowing eyes, and 9 chakra tails danced behind him. What do I want? Your absolute unquestioning loyalty. Zabuza managed only the slightest of nods. Naruto smiled and turned his gaze to the balcony upon which Gato had stood. The short man had collapsed on himself in sheer terror. He could not even manage a frightened scream as he found himself plucked by another chakra chain and pulled down. He addressed the man as he suppressed his power once more, though he made sure to maintain his red, slit eyes and elongated fangs and nails. Please don't kill me. He screamed pleadingly. I'll do anything you want. Just please don't kill me. Naruto smiled coldly. You too will submit to my will. The little plump man nodded continuously. Anything. He had truly put the fear of God in the tiny shipping magnate. Just don't kill me. I know you were here to force the people of Nami no Kuni to relinquish independence and join the Union of Hai no Kuni. What did they offer you in return? He interrogated. Nobility. Gato answered immediately in a scream of terror. They offered me nobility, a legacy to my name. I see it made sense, but he was repulsed by how much it reminded him of Hattori's teachings. From what I understand, you are the owner of a large shipping company. I have use for your connections and funds. The pitiful creature before him continued to nod obediently to everything he said. He almost felt guilty for putting such fear in him, but he also knew it was not unlike what his victim had done to the people of Nami no Kuni. From this day onwards, Gato Industries will be mine. You will maintain the company and its name in return for your life. Much to his surprise, the little man's head shot up in defiance. No. It appears he would rather die than relinquish his life's work. What will you do now? No. Naruto repeated slowly and intimidatingly. I would rather not do so, but if you require me to enslave your mind then I will. Please. A look of disgust graced the blonde's face. You should count your blessings. Your head remains on your shoulders, but Gato Industries is mine. I will hear no more complaints. Adam hung his head in defeat, crestfallen. You might as well kill me then. I will never surrender my life's work, he muttered despondently. We shall see about that. Death would be too sweet for you, he said as he placed a hand on the short man's head. Kurama, you're about to have a visitor. You can be exceptionally cruel when you want to be, Naruto. I have no pity for a man that has none for the people whose lives he has ruined, he replied coolly. Adam's eyes turned dull and unfocused, he began to drool as his subconscious was pulled into his own mindscape. Minutes later he released his hold on Gato's mind and watched with mild amusement as he continued to scream, his throat dry and hoarse. He waited a few moments for the shipping magnate to calm down. You will submit or I will feed you to my partner, he threatened one last time, with absolute finality. Adam's bulging eyes were set in absolute fear. What are you? I am many things, but to answer your question specifically, I am the Prodigy Training of the greatest of Bijk, he answered as his eyes bore into the greedy little man, cold and unforgiving. He and I do not particularly want you to continue to live, but we will allow you an opportunity to repent. From this day until your last, you will serve me faithfully. Do we have an understanding, Gato? Yes. Gato finally submitted, his head bowed by his feet. That is what I wanted to hear. He left the sniveling businessman where he was and turned to the forest. Come out, Kaiser. I will not hurt you. The fisherman appeared slowly from behind the trees. He looked almost as unnerved as Gato was terrified, breathing heavily and sweating profusely. You're something else. Naruto smiled disarmingly at the man. Come, we have some good news to share with the people of Nami no Kuni. You'll have to calm their fears after releasing your chakra like that. There is no way they didn't feel that, Kurama reminded him. Nami no Kuni Town Hall. It was an hour or so later and Naruto found himself in the town hall. Upon hearing his explanation when he returned, Tazuna and his family allowed themselves only a few minutes to rejoice before the bridge builder and his grandson set out to spread the news and call people to the town hall to celebrate, during which an emergency militia was formed. The militia would tomorrow begin apprehending the remnant that had remained in the town and terrorize the people. All illicit operations were to be dismantled with a vengeance. Taji had not at all approved of his releasing his chakra to such an extent, but he had told her his reason behind it after reassuring Tazuna that there had been no earthquake. She was worried he had shown too much mercy in letting Zabuza and his disciples live, but he reassured her that they would sooner flee the island than risk fighting him, though he was certain they would do neither. He had made sure to mark each of them before leaving them with instructions to secure the base of operations and eliminate all remnant that remained to fight. The people of Nami no Kuni were tumultuous in their cheers of rejoice. Naruto had distributed supplies they had on their ship, he was certain there was enough food to feed all of them for at least a day. He made sure to have some of his clones left at his new base in the woods to collect all supplies, which were now also being distributed. It will be a good shinobi outpost, don't you think, Kurama? It certainly saves on time and resources, the Bijk agreed. Though you will have to expand it eventually to accommodate more shinobi. Of course, he replied as he absent-mindedly shook a few hands of thankful citizens. Alright, settle down. Tazuna bellowed as he stood on a table, a large bottle of alcohol courtesy of Gato in hand. Quiet down. Eventually the crowd ceased their cheers and awaited the bridge builder's words. To our hero, Uzumaki Naruto. Taji smiled a little, despite herself, as she saw her son humbly accept their thanks, whilst attempting to somehow deal with the awkwardness he was experiencing from some of the girls his age. She had even spotted several women close to her age eye him as though he were a piece of meat. Sandame-sama will not be happy with this. That fool is of no concern to you. Hattori's voice replied from the back of her mind. Her soft expression turned blank. Yes, Hattori-sama. The celebrations continued well into the evening. It brought Naruto peace and a feeling of content to see the happiness in the people's eyes. He had never felt gratitude like this or as good about himself as he did at that moment. Though I could do without that, he thought as some passing teenage girls looked at him in a way he wasn't overly comfortable with. It reminded him of some of his less savory objectives awaiting him in Konoha. The few times he had to excuse himself and sneak outside. He wasn't used to being surrounded by so many people. It made his heart race to the point he feared it would explode in his chest. How do you propose to find a suitable wife when you cannot bear to be surrounded by people? Kurama asked him as he took some deep breaths to relax. I do not mind being around people. I'm simply not accustomed to it, Kurama, he replied after a moment. But you have a point, he conceded as he made to return to the party. Azuna stumbled outside the town hall in a drunk, loud and cheerful. There you are. Do you need me for something, Tazuna-san? He asked calmly as the bridge builder swung an arm around his shoulder. You remember your condition to getting rid of Gato? Well, I told them about it and there's going to be a vote tomorrow, he informed. From the vibe I'm getting, it looks like we're going to be Uzu no Kuni citizens. Naruto smiled, genuinely satisfied with himself. That is good news, Tazuna-san. Am I going to have to call you Damon-sama now? The bridge builder joked between sips. My friends can call me Naruto, he answered as he absent-mindedly patted his stomach. You have done well, Naruto. You have saved these people and secured new land and an increased population for Uzu no Kuni. That is quite impressive, I must admit. He thanked the fox once more as he joined Tazuna and the rest of the new citizens of Uzu no Kuni in the town hall where they would celebrate until the early morning. Izushiogakure. Hattori's devious grin threatened to split his face as the old man looking into his hands to find several strings of red hair. He cackled with glee, loud and uncaring, for he was alone on the island. Through the eyes of that dim-witted woman he had seen the results of his descendant effortlessly dispatching a tyrant. A mere day after he had left, his heir had secured a new population and land for Uzu no Kuni. Things were moving much faster than anticipated. Go on, my descendant, and carry out my will. He looked down once more at the strings of hair in his hand. Soon we will once more know glory. What if Naruto has Uzumaki ancestor bloodline? Thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.